Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Please go ahead and state your name for the record.
Seth Kinney.
Mr. Kinney, what do you do for a living?
I am the owner of a company that provides props to a number of feature films, as well as episodics, TV, including firearms, tactical gear, leather.
Hang on just a second. Okay. Come a little closer to you. You provide ammunition and firearms as a part of the props that you provide, is that right?
Well, not ammunition, because again, legally and technically,
I'm sorry.
blanks and dummy rounds.
Blanks and dummy rounds.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Sir, do you know a gentleman by the name of Thel Reed?
I do.
How do you know him?
I met Thale approximately 12 years ago, possibly even 12 to 14. He was opposite.
Just how do you know him? I don't need the history.
He's a work friend.
How long have you known him?
Of him, 12 to 14 years, and more like friends, approximately 5 to 7.
Okay. And do you know a gentleman by the name of Troy Teskey?
I do.
How do you know him?
He is a friend of Thale's, and we used to spend time together at his house or meeting at restaurants and things in Bullhead City.
And just for the record, what does Thel Reed do for a living?
Thale Reed is a bit of a legend, gun coach and armor to the film industry for going on 60 years.
And does he have a daughter?
He does.
Who is his daughter?
Hannah Gutierrez Reed.
And do you know her?
I do.
Have you met her?
I have.
Mr. Kinney, can you explain, were you ever asked to do any training for the set of the television series 1883?
Not training myself, no. But props, firearms, leather holsters, dummy rounds, blanks.
Those were items that you were providing to the set of 1883?
Correct.
As a prop house. You own a prop house?
Yes, and that's specific to the set.
So, if you know, was Mr. Reed asked to do anything relating to 1883?
He was. He was actually hired to be a gun coach. And
what does a gun coach do?
Well, gun coach.
We don't do this for a living.
Yeah. Gun coach would teach the actors that aren't familiar with things like the 1873 lever action period weapons, how to operate them smoothly and consistent with the character as called out by the script.
So did you and Mr. Reed go to Texas for any reason for 1883?
Yeah, we did all of our filming when we were involved with the project physically, personally, was done in Texas.
Were you asked to do a cowboy training camp?
We were asked, Thale and I were asked to be there.
To do what?
And Thale was charged with training of the actors. I was charged with bringing camp some of the live reload ammunition that Thale had.
And why were we in Texas?
Just to give them a sense of the recoil, and it went on a private range away from set.
And actors were shooting the live rounds.
I was.
And was Mr. Reed there with you?
He was. For the most part, he was in the Sprinter van with the AC running. It was a August, Texas summer day.
So did you take live round camp?
Yes. Yes.
And where did those live, who provided those live rounds? Did you provide them? Did Thel provide them?
Thale provided the live rounds. And we met in Albuquerque. And at that point, loaded up his luggage and everything he needed for the Turkey, prepped her out for the Nick Cage movie.
And just for the record, where did they drive from?
They both drove from Bullhead City, Arizona.
Oh, thank you. So they came to Albuquerque, and did they have live ammunition with them?
They did.
And where did you all go from there?
She loaded up and left to Livingston, Montana to work the Nick Cage movie. And Thale and I loaded up the Sprinter with everything we needed, and we headed straight to Texas.
And did you take that live ammunition with you to Texas?
We did.
And did the actors get to have their training camp?
They did.
And was there any ammunition left over? Where did it go?
It stayed in Texas for an undetermined amount of time. I can never figure out when it came back to the shop.
With who? When you say it stayed in Texas, did it sit by itself?
It was with the prop master for the day of the show up at the shooting range, up at the firing line. And from there, it came back into the Sprinter van, my Sprinter van. And then at one point, I was in the hotel room, And from there, when it got loaded back into the Sprinter van, and came back to Albuquerque.
So, but it doesn't come back to Albuquerque by itself. So tell us how it gets from the cowboy training camp to Albuquerque.
Well, it's driven back.
By who?
By myself.
Okay. So, and how is it packaged? What kind of a container is it in?
All the live ammunition from the cowboy training camp was in a typical household grade bin, approximately 2 feet long, 16 inches tall, about the same width. And it stayed in there and was packaged within each caliber individual that typically held about 50 rounds.
Approximately, you know exactly.
Well, it was a guess of fails that there was between 200 and 300, and they were loosely combined in a small military green ammo can. And when I opened up that bin in Texas at the firing range for the first time, I had brought along 10 boxes, white plain boxes with styrofoam inserts that held 50 rounds each. So I populated those boxes, and then I took a picture of those boxes. And one of the boxes is dog-eared, means it's partial, and coincidentally it held exactly.
Came back to New Mexico.
Between 50 and 100.
And when they came back to New Mexico, where did they go?
They went.
Were they in the green can?
No. Once they had been populated into the small white boxes, the green ammo can went to the firing line, and it was being used for the spent shells, for the spent cases of fired brass.
So how were they kept at PDQ?
They were kept in that same gray bin, large household typical gray bin, and within the same boxes that they had populated or gotten populated into at the Texas firing line.
So I'm going to show you what has been previously entered into evidence as Defendant's Exhibit A21. Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is that?
That is that gray typical household bin marked live ammo 1883.
Sir, I want to be clear with you. After this came back to Albuquerque and was at PDQ Props, did you then become involved in providing props and ammunition to the set of Rust?
Can you ask that again, please?
Did you provide props and ammunition to the set of the movie Rust?
I did.
Or was that after you brought these back from Texas?
I do not know. I do not know when this bin came back to Albuquerque from Texas.
You drove it back yourself?
I did, but I did a few trips.
You don't remember the day that you brought it back?
Correct.
Okay.
It could have been before the shooting, could have been after the shooting.
Understood. In terms of boxes of dummy rounds, how many boxes of dummy rounds did you provide?
Colt dummy rounds. That was the single box. The rest of them were of different calibers and were not contained in similar boxes.
So you provided one box of dummy rounds?
That's correct.
Where did you get those?
Those came off the set, off the prop truck of 1883.
And did you inventory them or do anything with them before you provided them to the set of Rust?
Yeah, so yes, there was, I essentially grabbed a double grocery bag and dummies because I knew they were running short, or I'd heard that they were running short on set. And I thought, well, just in case, I'll grab some extra for them. And so from that plastic bag, the following morning, because again, I had to sleep in a van because there was hundreds of thousands of dollars of weapons and it's Albuquerque. So I slept in the van armed, and the next morning brought that bag and brought them into the office and took a look at them. They were unusual in that they had been antiqued. They were one of a couple of thousand that had been antiqued en masse, and they were so corroded they didn't look right at all. So I sat there, and each one took about a minute to polish before it had an appropriate patina. And I also noted that a few of them had a muddy rattle to them, and I just attributed it to whatever liquid chemical agent that they had soaked the rounds in had infiltrated the interior of the case. And again, not a metallurgist, but had done something to the number 2 lead shot, a single piece that served as a rattle to differentiate live from dummies.
Okay, stand by. I'm just looking for some exhibits. We've got a lot right now, so I need to flip through for a second. the dummy rounds that you provided to the set of Rust, did you personally ensure that they were all inert?
Absolutely.
And was the box full when you provided it to Rust?
It was 50 rounds in a individually inserted into styrofoam, each housing, each section. So it's essentially a 5 row wide, 10 row deep styrofoam insert that holds the rounds separately from each other, and then is inserted into a small white enclosing box, cardboard box.
And when you provided them to the set of Rust, how did they get there? Did you drive there yourself?
Sarah Zachary, the prop master of Rust, came by my office and brought a gun that they were having trouble with, reassembling that gun after it was being cleaned. So I quickly put that back together, met with her, chatted, and gave her the dummy rounds.
And is that the only box that you provided?
Yes.
Did anything from this box that we have here, or this container, Defendant's Exhibit A21, was any of that sent to the set of Rust?
Absolutely not.
Let me ask you, did you also supply props and ammunition to the set of a movie called The Old Way?
No ammunition. Blanks and dummy rounds, yes.
And do you know who the armorer was on the set of The Old Way?
Hannah Gutierrez Reed.
And you indicated that you didn't supply ammunition. If you know, do you know if dummy rounds were used on the set of The Old Way?
They were. Dummy rounds were used.
And where did those dummy rounds come from if you didn't provide them?
They came from Thale Reed.
How do you know that?
Because I witnessed them packing up her car and assembling all the blanks and dummy rounds that she was going to need.
So did Hannah stay in touch with you when she was working as the armorer on the set of The Old Way?
Loosely, yes.
Did you receive any communications from her regarding the use of live rounds in the prop gun?
She did. She did reach out to me.
How? Text, call?
Both. She called on one particular day because she had been looking for 45 Colt ammunition, live ammunition to shoot.
How did you know that?
Because she asked me at the office. And I thought it was odd because Thale had live ammunition and why was he not giving his daughter any? I found it peculiar. So at one point in her travels from Albuquerque to Livingston, Montana, she stops along the way and stays with friends in Denver, Colorado. And at one point between Denver, Colorado and Livingston, Montana on her travels, she called me and told me she finally had found live ammunition, 45.
So once she makes it to Montana, does she contact you about shooting live ammunition out of the prop guns?
She does. She texts me this time and she asks if she can shoot live ammunition out of the set guns.
Well, how did you respond?
I said absolutely not, and it's a big mistake, and I even said it always ends in tears.
And did you have any additional communications with her about live rounds after that?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So after you take your box of dummy rounds and you give it to Sarah Zachary, do you ever see it again?
Only in the evidence photos.
Okay, so let's look at those. Defendant's Exhibit A27, previously entered into evidence. Do you see that?
I do.
And do you know what we're looking at here?
I do.
Describe to us what we're looking at.
Well, these are these antiqued rounds that came off the set of 1883, actually more specifically the prop truck of 1883. And you can see that they're heavily aged. And this is after each one has been polished with quad steel wool for about a minute.
Okay, that's fine.
Yep, okay.
What about this one? Does this one look different?
Yeah, absolutely. The case is way too bright. It looks nearly new. And that is an anomaly. I do not believe that came from me because all the rounds were heavily aged.
Okay. I'm going to show you what is entered into evidence of State's Exhibit 30. Do you see that?
I do.
What is that a photo of?
It looks to be the same antique rounds, dummy rounds that I provided Rust.
Okay. So you provide these to the set of Rust, and obviously there's an incident and Ms. Hutchins dies. Do you then reach out to law enforcement and begin communicating with law enforcement?
I do.
Why?
Well, I think they wanted access to the guns that were on the prop truck near the set of Rust. And there were some text message discussions regarding that. I offered to open the safe, to
why did you have a combination to the safe on the set of arrest?
Actually didn't until I think the day that I met former Detective Hancock at the prop truck, the day that they executed the warrant. I didn't actually have
Able to open the safe?
I didn't actually physically open it myself. I never went onto the prop truck, just passed along.
Okay, what did you do then?
Well, I met the side with Detective Hancock at the time, and at one point Sarah Zachary was there as well while they were searching the prop truck, and as well as opening and starting to pull guns out of the safe.
Okay. Do you recall having a conversation with Detective Hancock where you asked Mr. Teskey to provide information about rounds?
I do.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was one of 2 or 3 times that I went up to the sheriff's department to provide evidence or something that I thought might be of value to the investigation. Upon one, and I thought possibly Troy Teskey might something that was similar.
Give the text message between Mr. Teskey and Mr. Kinney. So I'd like to just go ahead and display it, and I can mark it and provide it to the court. I just don't have a paper copy of it. Do you need to see it?
No, I know.
Okay, let's go.
What is it going to be? This isn't one up that the supplemental is courts 13. I think I should have marked it separately as courts 1.
Okay.
Motion hearing. And then while we're here, I have not marked those. So
What do you want me to mark this?
now you're going to have to. Well, let me do this. Let me make this courts Roman numeral 1 and courts Roman numeral 2, and then you can keep your 1s and he can keep his alphabet. You can keep your numerics.
I should just continue with the next exhibit.
No, because we're in a motion hearing.
Right. So we'll call this state's exhibit 1.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Now, you also introduced some other evidence. Which you can refer to, you don't have to reintroduce it. We'll just identify it as like 27 from the trial. Okay.
So, okay.
All right. Okay. Can you mark this?
Is there a reason I'm not seeing this on the monitors? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's doing this.
Okay, sure. Do you see what's in front of you, sir?
Video.
Is this tell us what we're looking at here, and if you can, and what we're looking at is going to be state's exhibit
that are those reloads. These reloads are some of the ones that Thale left along with his guns for Troy Teskey to store.
So these never went to the set of 1883.
Absolutely not.
And
Definitely not a set.
Okay, whatever. The
Cowboy
cowboy training
yeah.
camp. And they did they ever go to you?
No.
Because they never went to you, were you ever able to intentionally or mistakenly provide them to the set of Rust?
Definitely not. And they're not even, the brass primers are a dead giveaway for that which was not on Rust.
And you bring me to my next question. Are you familiar with the way that the live rounds found on the set of Rust look?
I am.
Do they look like these?
No.
So let's look at the text exchange here at the bottom. Who's communicating?
My text is in green and Troy's is on the left side in black and white.
So what does Troy say?
Excuse me. Again, glasses are horrible. Sorry about this. Yeah, thank you. Just below the picture, Troy writes, I checked a bunch of the rounds. These are the 4 different types that I could find. And I reply, yep, it's evidence in the accidental death.
And hang on, we're going to stop there. Why did you think this was evidence in the accidental death?
Well, I think at that point, without having seen the evidence photos and knowing, the only thing I did see was Detective Hancock shared with me a black and white 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with some pictures on it, and I saw Starline brass, and it was in it, it was the nickel primer Starline brass case, and I hadn't really connected the dots that the gentleman that loads these hasn't had nickel primers in 10, 12 years.
How do you know that?
Well, he says he only used Winchester primers.
No. Did you speak to him? How do you know that?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Right after Hancock and I got done with this meeting, I called him because it dawned on me that it seemed unlikely that there would be 2 different color primers. And so I called the gentleman and I asked him, at what point, if you
What
made
gentleman? Don't use the word gentleman. We need names.
Joe Swanson.
Okay.
Okay. So I called Joe Swanson. I asked him at what point, if he remembered making the reloads for Thale, which he did. I asked him which powders he might have used, and he gave me 2 options, and one of which was Trail Boss powder. And I asked him, I said, well, at what point would you switch between brass and nickel primers? And he said, I wouldn't. And I said, well, why? He said, well, because Winchester stopped making them 10, 12 years ago.
Not making what?
Nickel primers.
Okay.
So he only, if we look at all the evidence photos of all the blanks that Joe Swanson makes, you will not see a nickel primer in any of those blank rounds for the same reason.
So you indicated to Mr. Teskey on November 1st, 2021, this is evidence in the accidental death. And you're talking about this photograph.
I am. And well, the rounds.
The rounds in the photograph.
Yes.
Have you learned a few things about the evidence in the case and the live rounds that were found on Rust since November 1st of 2021?
Yes.
Do you still believe that these are evidence in the accidental death?
Definitely not.
And then I see Mr. Teskey responds and says, okay, and then what do you say?
Can you zoom in? Thank you.
Let me see. There you go.
I reply, ugh, this sucks, but she's seriously trying to blame everyone else for her mistake.
What does he say?
He replies, who is she? Hannah? ? And I reply, Hannah.
And then you ask an important question. Read that to us.
Yeah, November 3rd, 2021, I ask Troy Teskey in text, did you see any rounds in either box with nickel primers?
What's his response?
He replies, no.
Okay. Is that just a close-up of the same photo of the ammunition?
It is.
And you would testify that this is dissimilar. This is dissimilar to the live rounds that were on the set of Rust.
Yes, and from this photo, we can only see that we have 4 different cases, different manufacturers of cases. The brass primers are obviously a dead giveaway. The actual powder itself, projectiles, are different than what was found on Rust.
So, Mr. Kinney, the ammunition that is in this can here that's defense
Seeing an exhibit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right.
I can't switch back.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Can you see it? Do you
Yeah,
want me
right,
to
yeah,
touch?
the gray bin. Yeah, the gray bin. Yep. I see it.
What happened to the ammunition that was in this can that you brought back from Texas?
It sat in that bin in the bathroom and
No,
was,
no. And ultimately, when did it leave PDQ? Under what circumstances?
oh, when the sheriff's department executed a search warrant on on my business.
They took all of it.
Yes, they weren't entitled to all of it, but I just said take all of it. The warrant specified it had to be Starline brass, and I just told them take it all.
So everything that you brought back from Texas is in the custody of the sheriff's department.
Correct.
Did you, at any point in time, did you ever exchange ammunition with Thel Reader Troy Teskey again after the death of Helena Hutchins?
No.
So any ammunition that would be in the possession of Mr. Teskey, is that anything that you have ever had possession of?
No. I've only once received 45 Colt live ammunition from someone, and that was Thale, and that on our way headed to Texas. And I hadn't opened the can until we got to Texas.
At some point in time, Mr. Kinney, did you have reason to believe that Mr. Reed and Mr. Teskey wanted to blame the introduction of the live rounds to the set of Rust on you?
To varying degrees, yes. I wasn't, yeah, Thale definitely. And later on, Troy, it seemed palpable that they were trying to point the finger at me.
Okay. Let me think. Hang on just a second. I just want to make sure I'm done. How certain are you that you didn't provide any live rounds to the set of Rust?
I have provided blanks and dummy rounds and guns to over 1,000 different productions. And on average, it's 5 to 10 guns per episode, per feature film. And each gun would typically have about 10 dummy rounds with it. So that's between 50 and 100,000 dummy rounds. And I have never spent more time with a single box of dummy rounds than the rounds that came from 1883, the dummy rounds that went to Rust. So there was never a question in my mind that I provided the live ammunition to Rust.
Okay. I'll pass this witness. And Mr. Spire, is there an exhibit that you need me to provide?
Just you can email me that.
The text message?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So in the thousands of times you provided ammunition to movie sets that you just told me about,
Blanks and dummy rounds.
I know, I apologize.
That's
I'm,
all
not, I'm not trying to use the word ammunition to
Okay.
get you.
Gotcha.
In the thousands of times you've done that, that would mean
I'm sorry, Your Honor, Ms. Johnson's asking to approach.
thousands of productions that you've
1,000-ish, not thousands.
Okay. The 1,000 productions that you said over 1,000 different productions.
Feature films, episodics,
Okay. 5 to 10 guns per episode per feature film.
or an episode.
Each gun would typically have about 10 dummy rounds with it. So that's between 50 and 100,000 dummy rounds, right?
Yes. 5,000. Yeah, that's the math. Yeah.
And you're telling this court that of all the dummy rounds in all the productions in all the years, these 50 were the ones that you checked the most.
They required the most time because of the antiquing and because that, again, some of them had a muddy rattle. So there was no point in providing a dummy round that had a muddy rattle to set. That's the last thing you want to have happen. And so each one had to ring clearly with the number 2 lead shot inside of it.
And of all the dummy rounds on all the sets, these ones had a muddy rattle.
No, the ones that were excluded had a muddy rattle.
I see. You provided 45 long Colt dummy rounds.
Pick them up.
Right. And you know Sarah Zachary was at your prop house on the 12th of October, correct?
Yes.
And you came back from Albuquerque. You came back from 1883 on the 11th, at least one trip, correct?
Yeah, I arrived sometime in the middle of the night, the night of the 11th. It could have been past midnight.
You got to put it on.
I said, okay. I'm sorry.
Thank you. You arrived the 11th.
Night of the 11th.
She comes the 12th.
Yes.
Shooting happens on the 21st.
Yes.
Russ needed 45 long Colt dummies.
May have knew they were running short,
Okay, they may have not needed it the most of all time, but they needed it, right?
possibly.
You have already told this court that you had brought 45 long Colt rounds from the set of 1883, correct?
The dummy rounds from the prop truck. Yes.
There were also live ammunition on 1883, correct?
No.
There was no live ammunition on the set of 1883, not on the set of 1883, at the cowboy camp, just off the set of 1883.
Not even close to anything that was filming.
Okay, so not anywhere close to filming, not on the set, but at 1883's cowboy camp.
The cowboy training camp for 1883. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you brought some of those live rounds to PDQ, correct?
Yes.
The live 45 long Colt rounds to PDQ, correct?
Yes.
And you've told this court that when you brought them back, they were between 50 and 100, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you provided 45 long Colts, again, you say dummies, I get it, to Sarah Zachary, correct?
Correct.
Those were Starline brass with nickel primers, correct?
Yes.
The invoice you provided to Sarah Zachary and the set of Russ had 200 listed as the amount that you provided, correct?
I don't recall.
Do you deny it?
Sounds about right. It could be. The invoice was generated weeks after, so it was done from memory at that point.
Okay. Have you been watching any of this trial?
No, just the headlines, whatever comes on the news.
Okay. Do you know that on direct examination of CST Popple, that this was entered into evidence, which is states 30?
I haven't seen her at all during
Got
this
it.
trial.
Well, eventually on cross-examination, it turned out that these were, of course, the rounds provided, correct?
Except for the bright one in the lower row, in the middle, just above the 2 zeros that are next to each other. Yeah, in the evidence number, I don't believe that is a round that came from PDQ.
When you say you don't believe, what you think you said is direct is you're not certain, but you don't believe, correct?
It's 2.5 years ago. It does not appear. I'm 99.9% sure that was not inclusive of the original styrofoam insert of 50 in the box.
Okay, so it sounds like you're not certain, but fairly certain, and it's been a long time. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. At the time, when your memory was fresher, you actually received a photograph of this, and you told Detective Hancock this, and it has a nickel primer, which is sketchy. Correct?
Can I don't know what the photograph is. A photograph of what?
Did you, in fact, tell Detective Hancock that that picture, that round, was sketchy?
I recall saying that, or texting her, possibly texting her saying that, because it was concerning, because it didn't look like any of the antique rounds that I had provided.
Right. So at the time, years ago, when you first see this, when your memory was fresher, the word you used was sketchy, correct?
I recall that, yes.
The incident happens on the 21st of October, and at 1:55 p.m., you receive a text message from Sarah Zachary telling you that this has occurred, correct?
I think it wasn't a telling me that it occurred. It just said emergency in all caps.
And you called her, right?
I did. I missed a call from her, received the text. I think I said I'd call her back, and I did
Okay.
within just a minute or two.
And between the time you provided, whatever it is that you provided to Rust, and the moment you get that emergency text, isn't it fair to say you're not sitting around, daydreaming and wondering and thinking about each round you provided and whatever you provided to the set? You do this for a living. You do it lots of times, right?
That's correct.
But the moment that happens, right, things changed, didn't they?
What changed?
Well, Ms. Hutchins died, right?
I wasn't aware of that till hours later.
You spoke to Ms. Zachary 5 times that night, right?
I don't recall. Probably.
Ms. Zachary, had the shell casing, right, at one point that evening?
No, I don't recall that.
You don't recall that?
No, that she said she held the spent case from the gun. I don't recall that.
Sarah Zachary threw out some of the evidence, correct?
I had heard that months and months afterwards that she had thrown out dummy rounds from Jensen Ackles' gun.
Months and months?
I believe so.
Sure about that?
Fairly. It's been a long time.
Right. And the only messages that we have from around that time we're going to look at. But you knew at that moment that you had just provided 45 Starline brass dummies, correct? With nickel primers.
Nearly all the dummy rounds I provide are Starline brass.
And you would agree with me that anybody who did provide that round or brought it onto the set would have every reason to want to deny that, correct?
No. Hannah Gutierrez admitted in questioning at the sheriff's office that she bought the box that contained the live rounds.
No, she didn't. She actually said she hadn't seen that box. And that's just something that's been fed to you by the prosecutors, and that's true.
No, I've actually seen the interview.
Okay, well, we can pull up that interview if we need to. So the week after the accident, that we have some of your text messages, right?
Yes,
Okay, and you weren't sleeping, right?
correct.
You were drinking a lot.
I don't even remember.
You were talking to your cop buddies to try to get advice about the case.
I don't recall that.
You texted Sarah Zachary in the days that followed, do not say anything or write anything to anyone, right?
Yes, I remember that text.
Do nothing, say nothing, write nothing, correct?
Correct.
She told you she wanted to get a lawyer, right?
Yes.
Told her not to get a lawyer, right? In fact, at one point you just said, shh, and with an emoji, right?
I don't recall that.
Okay. You did provide Detective Hancock. Do we have that photo that was entered into evidence on the screen? Okay. Did you email that? Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get it in a minute. But the one that you just saw on the screen of you and Mr. Teskey, do you remember that photograph that you just looked at?
With the reloads?
Yeah.
Yes.
You actually took a screenshot of that and sent it to Detective Hancock, correct?
Sounds like something I would do. I don't recall doing it, but it sounds accurate.
Okay. Does it sound like, I don't have the photo, but the photo that you took and sent of the screenshot that you sent to Detective Hancock, it included that line. Yes, this is evidence in the accidental death, right?
That was my speculation prior to learning that the live rounds from Rust had nickel primers.
Well, sir, that's the problem with your testimony, isn't it?
Which is what?
In the very same text chain, you asked about nickel primers. So how is it possible that you didn't know about it when you said that this is evidence in the accidental death?
Because the meeting with Hancock and the text exchange with the pitcher occurred on November 1st. 2 days later, on November 3rd, I had asked by text whether or not any of the rounds had nickel primers. And he replied, that Troy Teskey replied, no. And at that point, that was the reason why.
So this is, I think it's Court Exhibit 2, perhaps, of this hearing.
This one? No, mine are Roman numeral 1 and 2.
It's going to be States 1.
States 1.
I just haven't had a chance to mark it.
That's fine. We'll call it States 1 for now. Do you see it on your screen?
I do.
Okay. And you say, yep, it's evidence in the accidental death, correct?
That's on November 1st, yes.
Correct. That's what you wrote, sir, right?
On November 1st, yes.
Okay. And you didn't say anything about speculating, did you?
No.
Okay. But when you screenshot this to Detective Hancock, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, let me ask you, after he says, okay, you say, this sucks, but she's seriously trying to blame everyone else for her mistake, correct?
Yes, that's what it says.
Okay. So it's, this sucks, but she's trying to blame everybody else, right?
Yes.
This sucks that it comes from the same batch,
I would-
but it's really her fault because she loaded into the weapon, right?
Well, first off, I pronounced that ugh. And then what was the second part of your question?
But it's her fault because she loaded into the weapon, correct?
Certainly.
And you said that over and over again as you continue to meet with law enforcement, that whatever happened here, it's her fault. She loaded it, correct?
Well, certainly she's responsible and alive for that.
How come when you provided screen, this is defense one for the hearing. How come when you provided to
That's
the
A.
defense A, sorry, Your Honor. How come when you provided the screenshot of the text message to Detective Hancock, you left out the this sucks. But seriously, she's trying to blame everyone else for her mistake.
If you put that back up, I think you'll see that the digital keyboard is in the way of whatever's underneath it.
I see. And is there something with your phone where you can't take multiple screenshots and just go further? I don't think you mentioned on direct examination, but tell me if I'm wrong. You also made a phone call to Joe Swanson in front of Detective Hancock.
I don't recall it being in front of. Connector flight from Phoenix.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Both times, both at the truck and at your the search at your prop house. Both times you happened to be grabbing onto a flight and getting there just that day, right?
No, actually, I was in Las Cruces on Bruce Willis's final movie, finished that, and was heading to the Rust set directly from Las Cruces, driving in the Sprinter van.
That was after you got the code to the safe, right?
I recall that I got the code while driving.
So if law enforcement were to have represented in this courtroom that they needed you to open up the safe and that's why you were at the truck search, that's not actually true because Sarah Zachary had the code, they had the code. That whole story about needing you there for the code is pure fiction, right?
I don't know that it's fiction. I think it was more along the lines of Hancock wanted to interview me, and also I wanted to be there to assist in any way that I could have with the investigation. So I think they're being cordial in waiting for me to show up.
Okay. Back to PDQ. The warrant was signed by a judge authorizing them to search your property, right?
I saw that, yes.
And when you saw on the warrant that it talked about the reloads in the green ammo can, you actually started to text Detective Hancock, upset with her for including that in the warrant, didn't you?
I did.
You had video surveillance at PDQ, correct?
There was, I don't recall exactly at what point the camera overrode itself.
Well, that wasn't my question. My question was just you had surveillance footage at PDQ. In fact, in the...
Yeah, but excuse me, if the footage is, I don't have it.
You have surveillance equipment there that records whether it's overwritten or not. You don't know. Is that your testimony?
I have surveillance equipment, yes.
Okay. And actually, during the search of PDQ, you were looking at your phone because you have a remote access trying to see the surveillance footage and what it was catching. Remember that?
I don't recall that, no.
Did you deny it?
So if I was actually inside the premises,
You're inside the premises on your phone, looking at the surveillance equipment that you have. The testimony you have given this court is at that point in time, right? There's a green ammo can there, correct?
yes,
The same green ammo can you're calling Swanson and Teskey about in front of Hancock, correct?
sounds, yeah, roughly accurate, yes.
Right. And written on it was the word empty, right?
Oh, on, yeah, black ink next to the silver duct tape on top, yes.
And lo and behold, law enforcement doesn't find anything in the empty.
There was tags and office supplies and other things in it.
But we know at one point there was ammunition in it, right?
Last time I was in Texas.
Listen, the court doesn't.
Thank you.
Right up.
You swear firm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Have a seat, talking to the microphone.
Corporal. On November 1st of 2021, did you have a meeting with Seth Kinney?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of that meeting?
I don't know the entirety of the purpose of it, but I think it was something to do with ammunition for Rust.
And were you provided, or did Mr. Kinney share with you a photograph of ammunition?
Yes.
And do you recall the photograph?
No, I don't.
Would you recognize it if I showed it to you?
I might.
Does that look familiar?
Not entirely, no.
Okay, let me show you something else. Would it refresh your memory if you saw the text exchange between Mr. Kinney and Mr. Teskey?
Yes.
Can you see that? Do you want me, I'm going to enlarge it. Do you see the date?
I do.
I'm going to go down so you can see the rest of it. Do you see the rest of it?
Yes, I do.
Is that the photograph of the ammunition that was shared with you by Mr. Kinney that came from Mr. Teskey on November 1st?
I remember this conversation between the two of them.
Okay, explain it to us then.
Um,
And I'm sorry, I'm showing you for the record, States Exhibit 1 for the motion hearing. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Well,
Or-
tell us about the conversation.
Yes.
Tell us about this meeting. What happens?
So this was a conversation with Troy and Seth, and I guess an exchange of where the rounds that Troy may have had that could have been in relation to Rust. Right? Yeah.
So did you see this photograph on that day?
Yes.
And were you able from the photograph to determine whether or not these rounds were similar to the rounds found on the set of Rust?
These would not have been similar to what we had found on Rust.
Okay. And from this vantage point, how can you see that?
So some of them, well, a lot of them have an actual head stamp of companies or manufacturers such as Winchester, VHA. I think the other one says CBC. It's a little hard to see with the shadowing in the picture. The only one out of these that would have been somewhat similar to what we had found on Rust is the third one from the left, which shows the star and brass logo, and it says 45 Colts. However, a distinguishable difference in this round and what we had found on Rust would have been the color of the primer. They're different colors.
Okay. If you recall, did you yourself ever have a conversation with Mr. Teskey?
Not where it was just me and him, but I have had a conversation with him in the conversation.
So let me ask you this. After you were provided this information, the photograph and the information about the rounds, where was your understanding of where those rounds were located?
In Arizona.
And did you have any communications with Mr. Teskey about obtaining those rounds?
Yeah, I had asked Mr. Teskey at least a couple times for him to figure out how to send those rounds to the sheriff's office. I asked him on a couple different occasions to either ship them or figure out a way that we could still get them in the sheriff's office possession.
And you wanted to do that even though they didn't appear to match the rounds from Rust?
Yes.
Why?
Because the investigation in itself was still very fresh at that time. It was still ongoing. I wanted to make sure that we had all the information that was brought forward to us in order to continue this investigation.
Did you see Mr. Teskey at Ms. Gutierrez's trial?
I did.
And were you aware that Mr. Teskey was a friend of Ms. Gutierrez's father?
Yes.
Did you receive any communications during the Gutierrez trial relating to Mr. Teskey?
I did.
Tell us about those.
So during her Hannah's trial, or near the end of it, I had gotten some correspondence that a male by the name of Troy Teskey had came in and had ammunition, and that he wanted to turn it over
Came in where?
to the courts.
So he came here
Yes.
to this building.
Yes.
And who did he speak to, if you know?
He spoke to I believe the deputies downstairs that were working the courts.
And what were you doing at that point in time?
I was here in trial.
So you receive information that there's a person down there that has what?
Ammunition.
And how did you respond? What did you do?
I had asked the deputy, I said, can you just have him wait here until I have a moment that I can speak with him?
Did he wait for you?
No.
Where do we go from here? What happens next?
From there, I believe we had a break. I had asked, they said he was no longer here. And then further on into the day, I don't know if it was a call or a text message, but I had gotten word that Troy had shown up to the sheriff's office and was trying to turn over that ammunition. At that point, we're still in trial, so I have a little bit of limited time and where I need to figure out logistics with this. And I believe I had gotten a call from the lieutenant or someone there, and I said, okay, well, I'm still here, but I will make contact with him at a later point and get a statement from him so we can figure out what to do with this.
And at that point in time, were you aware that he had left some ammunition at the sheriff's department?
Yes.
And did you take steps to contact Mr. Teskey to take his statement?
I did. I called him twice when I had found out that he had shown up to the sheriff's office. I didn't receive, or he didn't pick up the phone, and I never received a call back
And let me ask you, why is it important for you to take a statement?
because I need to figure out what to do with this ammunition and how it would potentially be tied to the case and in what way, so I can figure out what to do with it after that.
At the time that you were reaching out to him that day, do you have any idea whether or not this is related to the case?
Just by him saying it might be, but not in what context it would have been.
But you didn't speak to him?
No.
Okay. And is that the reason you were trying to reach him?
Yes, and to try to set up something where I could have a discussion or an interview with him.
And you want to have the interview because you want to see if it's tied to the case?
Yes.
So you call him twice, and does he respond?
No.
Do you continue to try to reach him?
I did try to reach him again. I believe it was the following week. I tried to reach out a couple times and never received a response back.
So if you don't have a witness who will give you an interview regarding the items that they've dropped off at the sheriff's department, how do you know that they're in any way related to the case?
I really wouldn't, because I didn't have a discussion with him.
Has Mr. Teskey ever returned your calls?
No.
Did you, are you aware that the exchange between Mr. Teskey and the people at the sheriff's department that took place when you were in trial with me, are you aware that at least part of that was recorded on a body-worn camera?
I know now.
When did you learn that?
Today?
And have you had an opportunity to review it?
We've
Yes.
never been given this, Your Honor.
I just got it. So
I just want the court to know. This is
I can give it to them.
this is the newest of the revelations.
So there's a, when Teskey comes into the station, it's being recorded on a body worn camera?
I believe that the defense did have it because they knew what Mr. Teskey was saying to Popple. That's the basis of the
Well,
cross-examination.
it's not, it hasn't been admitted as an exhibit.
Sure, and I can call Popple and have it admitted as an exhibitor. I can call Brendel, but it's a motion hearing. How do you want me to handle it? She's now seen it. I can give it to the defense.
No, I'm going to have the person that, whose body it was on. Let me ask you, in the meantime, while I'm listening to this testimony, can I have the exhibits from Popple that she testified about the bullets and what they were, when they went to the FBI? Her inventory of bullets. May I have those exhibits? I know there's a lot of them.
Sure. I think there are probably some also from the defense. So does the defense want to go through their file? Do you want me
I
to
just
do it?
want the ones that Popple testified off of, not any
I don't
cross.
remember exactly.
Are you looking for the one that I just highlighted specifically?
No, I'm looking for the ones that Popple testified, she inventoried and had tested.
Are you asking for scene photos or no? Just the ones that she had at the
Yes,
sheriff's
yes,
department?
where she went through and somewhere in Ziplocs.
Okay, so not scene photos, just the ones from the sheriff's department?
Mhm.
Okay.
Do you have those?
There should be.
And just for the record, Judge, we don't have the body worn camera.
I'm hearing you. I want to look at the bullets.
The physical.
Okay, I'll take the physical.
The physical, is it on YouTube? You don't need photos of boxes?
No,
just
no,
okay.
I want what she testified of, the ones that were gathered at the scene, and then she went through how she tested them. There they are. Okay. All right, I think these are fine, Ms. Morrison. Okay, thank you.
Oh, so you want the actual bullets?
Oh, these are fine. Okay, well, I was gonna take the photos, but these are good too.
Okay.
Are these, may I ask, are these these aren't all that were gathered at the scene, were they?
They are,
These are the sum total?
correct. There were only 5 live rounds in addition to the spent casing.
Okay, which ones were only the live rounds tested by the FBI? No, there were more that were tested by the FBI.
There were dummy rounds that were sent to the FBI that were confirmed to be dummy rounds.
Okay, that's what I want to look at.
The
Do you have
dummy-
pictures? Do you have pictures of that?
I don't think we've had to testify to that. I don't know.
Can I have all the exhibits that were entered while she testified? That's the best way to put it.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt.
No. Do you want them from the state and the defense?
Yes.
Okay, because
Do you want to announce what they are? Hey, can you tell us what the exhibits are during Popple's testimony? Or I actually can, because I took notes. There they are. Let me do it.
Give us numbers, hang on.
All right, do you want me to tell you what they are?
I think Brian next to me has them. I'm just trying to get there. So I don't want you to list them off to me yet.
Well, it's just 15 through 21.
And I'm looking to start here at 15. I'm not finding 15, so give me just a minute. I've got 18 set aside. I've got 17 set aside. 15, 16. What was the other one? That's 15, 16, 17, and 18.
Okay. And then 20, 21, 23.
Okay, slow down, because it's, if you would, please. What was give me the first number again? We've got a ton of
20,
exhibits.
20, 21,
20 and 21?
23, 25.
Hang on. This is 20. You
Oh,
want that?
no, I just want the gun.
21 is the shot of the pew.
Yeah, I don't want the pew. I want
Okay, what else?
just
So here's 10. Do you want that? That's a scene photo. She testified to it.
a scene photo. What do you mean?
It's from the set of Rust. It was taken on the set.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want these? This does, okay. This one has ammunition on it?
Which is that from, oh, no, I don't want,
This
I
is
only want
9.
the ones on the set, not in PDQ.
Okay. So what I'm handing you is all photos of state's exhibits that were of ammunition. Do you want the spent casing?
No.
Okay. Do you want me to go through the defendant's exhibits?
I want the defendant to go through the defendant's exhibits.
Glad you asked.
Do you want this?
Yeah, sure. Where's
Okay,
that?
that's the spent casing.
Okay, yeah.
These are the ones I have.
I have them here.
There you go, Judge.
Oh, thank you so much. These are it? After all I asked for? It's kind of thin. For
You
my,
know what? Hang on just a second. Let me go through these real quick.
All right.
Stop for just a second. Let me see what's in front of me.
these are enough. These are enough. These are enough. Okay, I'm good. I'm good. All right, let me just use these. Okay, let me just see if I might ask for more later. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt your question.
No, that's fine. Due to Mr. Teskey's refusal to speak to you, were you ever able to tie the items that he dropped off at the sheriff's department to the set of Rust?
No.
Given that this is a motion hearing, and if the court wants me to do this a different way, please tell me. Over the lunch break, were we able to obtain the video and watch it?
Yes.
Did you hear what Mr. Teskey said in the video regarding whether or not these came from the set of Rust?
He said that they were not from the set.
That's what he said on the video.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm happy to get,
He can't cross-examine off of this.
sure,
so,
and I can get it to him.
well, you are going to give it to him, and this testimony, he can call her back up if he wants. But
Absolutely, sure. I'll pass the witness.
all right, I have some questions. Can you put back on that video of the text that Seth Kenny
Sure.
got from Teskey?
If you guys have a flash drive, I'll give you that video right now.
And can you blow that up?
Let's talk about it.
Top.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to ask some questions.
Sure.
All right, so you testified that that only one seemed similar. Let's see. One similar to the Starline brass color primer in Arizona, and that it's the third one. It's a 45 Colt.
It didn't seem similar in the primer. It was different in the primer color. So
In what, why is it different in the primer color?
because the primer on this, the third one it's a brass color. The primers that came from Rust were silver.
These are, you counsel, you need to come up. Counsel, you need to come up. I'm questioning, you're gonna need to see this, both of you.
I can see what you're showing her. I saw what you're showing her.
I only see one silver here.
Right, but this is in reference to the live ammunition.
Look, you just testified. Let me just ask this. None of these look similar to the set on rust,
To the live ammunition.
to the live ammunition on
Yes,
rust.
ma'am. Yes, Your
Okay.
Honor.
But it still looks similar to what was on rust.
Yes, yes.
It looks similar to these on rust.
For the dummies, yes.
Yes, it looks similar to dummies on rust.
Dummies, but not live.
Okay, I understand your distinction on
Okay.
live. But they still look similar. That one, the third one from the left, still looks similar to dummies on rust.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Can I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
I may not even need the video right now, so we can start without that.
All right.
Good afternoon, Corporal. When you started investigating this case, you were investigating this concept of sabotage, that there could have been an intentional live bullet placed onto the set. Do you remember that?
Not originally, but later on, yes.
Okay, and obviously if somebody,
I missed a question. Let me just ask
Sure.
it. So they're not similar to the live rounds. That was not similar to the live rounds, but they were similar to the dummies on rust.
That's correct.
Okay, and the dummies on rust were tested with the live ammo by the FBI.
Yes, some of the dummies were sent.
Some of the dummies that look like that one on the phone.
I couldn't say which exact ones were sent to the FBI.
Okay, but you just testified that looks similar to the dummies on rust.
Yes.
You didn't differentiate, and that some of the dummies on rust were sent to the FBI.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
so at a certain point early on in this case, you entertained the possibility that this was an actual sabotage, that somebody could have intentionally placed the lethal bullet onto set, correct?
Yes.
And you quickly dispensed of that concept, right?
I don't think it was quickly dispensed. It was investigated.
Okay. And fair to say that if that had happened, that would have been a far different case, right?
It could have been. I don't.
And so then you turn to the idea of, well, somebody outside of Rust could have placed or been the cause of the ammunition ending up on set. And you interviewed Seth Kenny, I think you told this court yesterday, 10 times at least, right?
Yeah, I can't put an exact number, but it was a few times, yes.
Right. And that would have been a different case also, right?
If he had provided them? In relation to this case or in relation to the past case?
In relation to any case.
It's hard to say.
Well, you were here for investigator, I'm going to do this again, CST Popple's testimony yesterday, weren't you?
Yes.
And you've had an opportunity to view the 45 Starline brass that came out of this package today, correct?
No.
You haven't looked at it yet?
No.
Okay.
He was excluded as a witness, I think.
And are you aware, as you sit here, that there was 45 long cold Starline brass nickel in the courtroom today from CST Popple?
I just found that out today.
Okay. So you were here for this testimony in this courtroom. And let me ask you, Ms. Popple, the ammunition that the Good Samaritan, Mr. Teskey, the close friend of Hannah Gutierrez's dad, when that ammunition that he brought into you after the conviction, you still have it? Answer, yes. Question, you can bring it in here and you can show it to the jury, right? Answer, yes. And they can see for themselves that it does not match the live ammunition from the set of Rust, correct? Yes. And that it is obvious. Just when you look at it, it is not. Yes. Do you remember that testimony that you were sitting here for?
Yes, I do.
And that turns out to be completely false, doesn't it?
You're correct.
Mr. Kenny was just here. Did you see him in the hallway?
I saw him in passing, yes.
You interviewed him, I think you said over 10 times, right?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number.
40 plus phone calls, I think.
It was a lot.
Okay. And we have some of those text messages, and I'm going to put up defense B on the screen. And it's not working. Okay. Okay. And you see at the top, this is a screenshot that he sent to you, right?
Yes.
And you see it ends with, yup, it's evidence. Yup, it's evidence in the accidental death, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. And he does not include the, ugh, this sucks when he sends it to you, right? You don't see any ugh, this sucks on this, do you?
No.
It talks about how it's clearly, it looks like it's been reloaded. And that's him telling you that, right?
Sorry, let me just read really quick.
Sure.
Okay.
And you ask a very interesting question, Corporal, that sounds a lot like the question the court just asked you. You ask, do you think it could have come from the same batch since it's a different color, right?
Yes.
And he says, in writing, in no uncertain terms, I thought the same thing regarding primer, but Joe has been known to mix different color primers and blanks. So no, still highly likely that it's from the same batch. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And you had that information in the month following the incident, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to fast forward. I'm not going to go through the Seth Kenny story with you today, okay?
Okay.
But it's fair to say, fast forward to the end, Mr. Teskey comes in, and you had known Mr. Teskey's name because Seth Kenny had called him in front of you, right?
Yes.
And Seth Kenny's name came up, withdraw. Troy Teskey's name came up several times because Seth Kenny brought him up several times, right?
Yes.
In relation to the idea that the same batch of rounds from 1883 had at different points and different quantities touched Joel Swanson, Troy Teskey, Seth Kenny, right? They were all involved.
I don't know if it was where it originated from exactly, but that it might be related, might be.
And that they would talk about in front of you on speakerphone the green ammo can that had leftover ammunition, correct?
Maybe I'm not too sure.
Well, you're not denying that, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay. And in fact, when you went to search PDQ, in the warrant that you put in front of a court to get access to PDQ, you wrote into that warrant that you needed to find the green ammo can, correct?
I did.
And the reason that you needed to find the green ammo can, as you explained in the warrant, was because there may be live ammunition on it that matched the round that struck Ms. Hutchins, correct?
Yes, that's where that originated from, was from Thel.
Well, see, I knew you were going to do that. It's not the only place it originated from. It also came up with Mr. Teskey and Mr. Swanson in front of you on November 1st when Mr. Kenny found out and said, shit, but it's her fucking fault, right?
He said that a lot.
He said that exact phrase? Shit, but it's her fucking fault? He said that a lot?
Yeah.
Did you grow suspicious of Mr. Kenny? Have you kept saying that?
No.
Oh, okay. So in any event, you knew that Mr. Teskey was at least somewhat involved because when you're interviewing Mr. Kenny, he's calling him in front of you, correct?
Yes.
Sending you screenshots of messages with him, correct?
Yes.
So Mr. Teskey showed up here, according to you, at the Hannah Gutierrez retrial, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Teskey then walked into the police precinct with ammunition that he claims and says is matching to the ammunition that struck Ms. Hutchins, right?
I don't think he ever made the statement it was matching.
Well, that's really for law enforcement and the FBI to decide, isn't it?
Which would have been investigated if he would have answered a phone call or returned a phone call.
Okay, and I know we're going to get to that, don't worry. But that wasn't the first excuse you gave, Corporal. The first thing you said when this came up on direct examination was that you didn't know it was related to this case. Do you remember testifying to that on direct?
How would I have known if I wasn't given an opportunity to talk to him myself?
You would have no way of knowing that the man who was on speakerphone with you talking to Seth Kennedy, the man whose screenshots you received, the man who showed up at the Hannah Gutierrez retrial, the man who walked into your precinct talking about the Rust movie, you would have no way of knowing that it was related to Rust?
I would have need to come to the conclusion myself that it could have been tied back to Rust. There's been many people throughout this investigation that state that they have evidence or testimony to give that wasn't in relation to what I was doing.
Uh-huh. So is there other evidence in this case that has this quantum of proof that you have hidden from the defense?
I don't think I've hidden anything.
Is there any other evidence in this case that you think this court should be aware of, that you're aware of, Corporal Hancock?
No.
And when Mr. Teskey came in, he stated that he believed it was from the same batch of ammunition that was located at Seth Kennedy's warehouse in Albuquerque, correct?
When he came in?
To the precinct.
So sorry, I just want to understand this.
Mhm.
You're saying that Troy Teskey made the statement to law enforcement that the ammunition matched Rust.
Correct.
I Where is that statement coming from?
In your own police report.
Okay.
I'm reading it.
Okay, so this,
Can I
that's
see
not
the
my
video?
police report.
I didn't say it was your police report.
You just said it was.
No, I said in the police report.
Just as a point of clarification, can we?
Is this an objection or should we just talk?
Yeah, you gotta have an objection, okay? I said that, no running things.
My
Speak,
request is that we correct the record with regard to Mr. Styron's.
that is not an objection.
Okay.
What is your objection?
I want to correct the record that.
One
you can
word.
say I'm showing you your police report.
He's corrected himself, a police report.
In the department, in your sheriff office's police report, okay? I don't mean your personal police report, but in your sheriff's office police report, right?
Okay, understand.
Okay. And not only does this police report come into the very same sheriff's office, correct? Right? This is your police department, right?
Yes.
Okay. Not only does it say live rounds of ammunition that he believed to be connected to the Rust case, right? You saw
Yes,
that, right?
yes.
Okay. Not only does he say it's the same batch that was at Seth Kenny's, right?
I mean, that's what it says there. I don't remember that statement in the video, but
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because the videotape, whatever there is that has also not been turned over, it didn't necessarily capture every conversation that Mr. Teskey had inside the police department that day. You don't know that.
that's correct.
Okay. And the other thing that I wanted to mention at this point is it's not as if Mr. Teskey was talking to some random auxiliary cop that happened to be walking through the station. He was talking to CST Papa, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
The same CST Papa that testified yesterday, right?
Yes.
That testified that everywhere in this case that she went, you went. Remember that testimony?
Yes.
Okay. She goes to the church on the day of the incident, you're there, right? She goes to the search of the truck, you're there. You go to PDQ, you're there. In the prosecutor's office, you're there. Trial prep, you're there. And that's who took this statement, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Every time you inventory an item in this case, there's no matching witness statement, right?
No.
Right? You pick up there's dozens of items, dozens and dozens of items that you all inventoried in this case that have no matching corresponding witness statement, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the story that has now been come up with, that the only reason we couldn't take this item was because there wasn't a matching witness statement, is just spun out of whole cloth, isn't it?
I don't think your statement's entirely correct. You said the reason why we couldn't take this item, which we did take the item.
You took the item, but you took it and put it in a different box than the rest of the items in the Rust case, correct?
Well, I don't think they're all, I mean, I'm not the evidence technician, so I don't know how.
Well, you know this wasn't placed and designated as a Rust evidentiary matter. It was kept and vouchered, as you heard yesterday, under a completely separate identification number, correct?
A different case number.
Right?
Yes.
Unlike the hundreds and hundreds of other items that were collected in this case from a variety of sources, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And a lot of those items were like random, irrelevant, tangential things that all went into CST Popple's inventory in this case, right?
I think all those items were collected on scenes through search warrants or through somebody that gave them to us that we could have had a conversation with. And I could be able to relate what that item was and how it may have been related to Rust.
There was no way to relate this item to Rust, and the guys in your precinct telling you this is related to Rust, and you had spoken to him on speakerphone and you had gotten those text messages. There's no way to relate it.
Again, I didn't get a statement from him when he's dropping off this ammunition and didn't see it because I wasn't there when
Well,
he was dropping the ammunition off.
well, your colleagues got a statement, didn't they?
Yes.
Right? It's not like he didn't give a statement that day. He sat in the precinct and met in a room with your colleagues and did give a full statement. So that wasn't true either, right?
I didn't know that until today, that he had sat down with someone.
Okay, but now that you know that, now that you know that he gave a full witness statement, the story that the only reason that law enforcement couldn't possibly dream up a way to connect this to Rust and put it with the rest of the evidence doesn't work anymore, does it? Because he did give a statement, right?
I'm not going to agree with that because he said it didn't come from the set.
Well,
So
you keep saying that, but he's not. The point of this isn't that he literally snuck onto the set and took it back, right? The point is that he had the matching ammunition so that we could understand the source of the lethal round, right?
but again, I didn't know he had matching ammunition.
Well, but your colleagues did.
Again, that wasn't something that was told to me.
understand your testimony, but given that, read with me, that if law enforcement were to come into this court and say, the only reason we couldn't possibly connect this to Rust was because he didn't give a witness statement, that doesn't work if he did give a witness statement. True?
Potentially, I'm going to still say that I wouldn't agree with that because I wasn't able to speak with him and how it would have been in relation to Rust. When we submit things, we normally need to have a way to describe to the lab the reason for the testing.
We're going to jump to testing now?
Okay, well, maybe not testing, but
Overruled.
Is there a rule in your department that when you take in evidence from somebody who says it's connected to something, that you need to have some additional witness statements before you just voucher it and inventory it with the rest of the evidence? Is there some rule that you could point the court to?
I don't think there's one.
Right. And in fact, there couldn't be, because nowhere else in this case of the 100 of items did this rule apply. Right?
But I don't know, I don't think it's correct to compare all the other items in this case to ammunition that was turned in during the end of a trial.
Okay. And I don't want to go through every single item that was inventory, voucher, whatever word you want to use in this case. But can we agree that there were lots of items vouchered and taken into evidence in this case that are more irrelevant than this very crucial piece of evidence, right?
I would say that there were items taken in that were irrelevant to maybe trials and all of that, but I can't say how relevant this is if I don't know the origination of where it came from.
And the real reason that you didn't inventory this with Rust evidence is because this harmed and jeopardized law enforcement's case, didn't it?
No, I wouldn't say it either way.
Okay. Well, you then told the court, right? So we worked through a few of these things. One, first you said you didn't know how it was connected. Then you said nobody interviewed him, couldn't connect it. And then you said to this court that you followed up with Mr. Teskey, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when you follow up in cases, right, and have all your police reports, you write down in a police report, attempted to contact manager Chi Ho, returned my call, missed his call, voice message, right, in your police reports, right?
In mine, that's not mine.
In law, I shouldn't keep using the word yours. In the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office, when you all reach out to witnesses, there are often case supplemental reports indicating an attempt to contact someone, correct?
It's not a requirement.
Okay, did I ask you if it was a requirement?
And I'm just answering your question as to, I don't have to say every day and every time I tried to contact somebody.
Okay. But I'm asking you a slightly different question, which is that in this case, this Rust case, okay, there are lots of police reports in this case that are in your file, even if you didn't personally create them, that indicate law enforcement attempting to contact witnesses and failing to reach them, correct?
That specifically, I don't know.
You can't answer that question, yes or no?
Well, I'm explaining why that was.
I didn't ask why. I'm just asking. In your own file that you as the lead agent have, there are lots of police reports that say Detective so-and-so tried to reach somebody, couldn't reach them. Isn't that true?
In this case, yes. And that was done for a specific reason.
Okay, that's great. When you reached out, according to you were trying, moving heaven and earth to try to reach Mr. Teskey. Did you ever create a supplemental police report?
No.
Okay, let's go on to the next thing, which is you testified on direct examination that you then, in the weeks, months, whatever that followed, you attempted to reach Mr. Teskey, correct?
Yes.
Have you reviewed your phone records?
For which ones?
Are you sure you did that?
She asked you a question.
I'm asking for which phone.
Well, which do you have multiple phone numbers?
Yes.
Okay, I know the cell phone number that you've given out in this case, because we have those,
Mm-hmm.
right? Did you use that cell phone to contact Mr. Teskey?
I don't know exactly which phone that I used now.
Okay. Did you use the desk phone?
I don't know exactly which phone that I used.
Okay, well, there's no phone messages or calls, Mr. Teskey, from the cell phone that you used when you were conducting the rest of your law enforcement in this case, or the precinct, when you claimed to this court that you called?
Yes, I did call him.
No, but I'm asking you a different, well, let me ask this. Well, you don't know what phone you called from?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, there are no calls from you and your cell phone that you used for everything else in this case to Mr. Teskey during the weeks that you claimed you were trying to reach him. Do you know that?
Okay, so that's my cell phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. There's also no phone calls in the days and weeks that you claimed you were trying to reach him from the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office, the 505-428-3700 number. Okay?
That's our dispatch number.
Okay. There's no messages from any Santa Fe Police Department's phone in his phone records during that time period that you claimed you were trying to reach him.
Yeah, but if I call, it's more than likely not going to come up from a no caller ID.
That's a no caller ID situation?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I would like to see the body worn camera at some time if that's even necessary for this proceeding, and I have no further questions for this witness.
The court has some follow-up questions. So on testimony, I don't know who asked it, but anyway, you understood that Troy Teskey came over to the court and the deputies told him to wait for you, and that when you came down.
Fly in the coop, but I need some more. Your antics make me bored, cause I just came around to say hello. Oh, oh, oh. I just came around to say hello. Say hello. Hello, Moto.
When I was looking for him, I was told he had left.
All right, and at that point you were aware it was Troy
Yes.
Teskey?
Yes.
Okay, so then you find out that because he couldn't, well, assuming he couldn't reach you here, he went over to the sheriff's office, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you say today that he did not, he said these weren't from Rust, that's from you reviewing the lapel camera, correct?
That they were not from the set.
The set, and that's from reviewing the lapel camera, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you just reviewed that today, you didn't review it before?
That's correct.
All right, so when you find out, I assume from Popple, that he was over there and he dropped off the ammo, right?
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure who told me, but
Okay. You can't confirm or deny that, well, you didn't know that he said it wasn't from the Rust set. In fact, the report says that he says it was from the Rust set, correct?
right, which I had just reviewed today as well.
Right.
Yes.
But when Popple when you were advised that Troy was there or was there, your understanding was that he was claiming it was from the Rust set.
I wouldn't say it was from the set, but it could be in relation to Rust.
Okay, so he told Popple it was related to Rust.
Yes.
Okay, and you didn't go over to the sheriff's office and look at the ammo.
No, I was here.
Well, I understand you were here, but you didn't there, you said, well, Hannah Gutierrez's trial was over, which I took to mean that it wasn't pressing, but this case was ongoing at that time.
Yes.
So did you and Popple have a conversation about what to do with this ammo?
To my understanding, it was going to be put in evidence
Which evidence?
at the sheriff's office.
The Rust evidence?
No.
Why
Just-
not?
Just as far in our evidence section in the sheriff's office.
And why was that determination made?
As to why
Who
it
made it?
was.
Let me ask you, who made it?
These were discussions that were had with myself, with the supervisors at that time, and then with the prosecutors.
Were you the lead investigator?
Yes.
Okay. And you said, and with the prosecutors.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you all had discussions about what to do with what he dropped off.
Yes.
And you all agreed to put it in this separate file.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just very brief follow-up on the court's questions. The defense requested, both through you and the prosecutors, to see all of the ammunition in this case, right?
Yes.
Okay. And obviously, and I know it's obvious, but I want to make sure it's in the record, we were not ever shown that, correct?
Well, I believe that you guys had a secondary evidentiary meeting with the sheriff's office that was canceled the day before the meeting was supposed to happen.
Well,
Or an evidence showing, I'm sorry.
okay, yeah, we were able to come for some showings and not others. The reality is, when we came for showings, you never showed us this evidence, correct?
I don't know if I can agree with you there, because even on the first day that I was present at the evidence hearing, we didn't get through all the evidence that they wanted to see that day.
I don't have any more questions for this witness.
Let me ask you something. If Ms. Popple said it was not in the evidence viewing, would you disagree with her?
If this ammunition, sorry, I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
If what Troy Teskey dropped off was not in the evidence viewing, because I can get the testimony, but they had a narrow. If Ms. Popple said it was not part of the evidence viewing, that you did not gather it for the evidence viewing, would you disagree with her?
I believe that we were sent a list of what they wanted to see. And then, Your Honor, the first day that we had done an evidence showing, we didn't get through everything.
That's not what I asked you.
And then, yeah, I understand what I'm trying to, then we had another day.
Pardon me?
We had a second day that was set up to
I
continue.
asked you if you would disagree that Ms. Popple said.
Design, develop, scale, repeat. Wix Studio, the platform for agencies and enterprises.
I really don't know how to answer
All right,
that.
Thank you. Redirect?
I can't provide the video until she logs into this system. Mr.
You know, I don't even think the video is relevant. She did not view it until today, so you can look at it, but do you have any cross-exam for her?
I just need to develop my records, so I need to get the video in. I need to get the video.
You can get the video in, okay? Are you gonna get it in through her? Because I said it should come in from the person that wore the body
I
camera.
agree with you. He's here.
Okay, well, fine. So do you have any cross-examination for her?
I do. Corporal, as you sit here today, do you have any reason to believe that the ammunition that was provided by Mr. Teskey came from the set of Rust?
No.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
When you say that there were discussions and the decision was made by all of you to put that ammo in a separate file, right? Is that correct? You said that?
Yes, ma'am.
Was Ms. Morrissey part of that discussion?
Yes.
Thank you.
But let me give the court an offer of proof, and if Mr. Spiro wants me to, I'll testify under oath.
You are going to testify.
Sure, absolutely, I'm happy to. I'm showing you State's Exhibit 16. How do you know that's related to the set of Rust?
Because it was collected during a search.
Did it come from the scene?
Yes, I believe that one did come from the church.
State's
around.
Exhibit 29, how do you know that's related to the set of Rust?
That was the casing that Marissa collected.
State's Exhibit 10, how do you know that's related to the set of Rust?
Collected.
All of these photographs and all of the items that are in evidence, how do you know they're related to the set of Rust?
Because we got them from Rust, or during the investigation or some part of the investigation.
How do you know these rounds were in any way related to the set of Rust?
I don't.
Okay.
How do you know these rounds were in any way related to the set of Rust? I don't. I really don't know how to answer that.
I don't. I want to, and you just need to develop my records, so I need to get the video in. I need to get the video in.
I don't.
let's bring in Randall, if that's his.
Are you finished?
Yes, I'm sorry. I
Witness
apologize.
is excused. Thank
Okay.
you. Is your next witness?
Basic Judge, raise your right hand.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have a seat. Talk into the microphone.
State your name, sir.
It's Lieutenant Brian Brandel
How are you currently employed?
at the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office.
And do you know why you're here to testify today?
Yes,
Were you present when a gentleman by the name of Troy Teskey brought ammunition into the sheriff's department?
yes, I was.
And at the time, were you running your body-worn camera?
Yes, I did.
And has that now been provided to me?
Yes,
Now, just so that we're clear, when you ran your body-worn camera, how did you preserve that video?
it is uploaded into a WatchGuard cloud.
And when you upload them to a WatchGuard cloud, do you link them to a case number?
Yes, they can be linked to a case number.
Was this video linked to a case number?
I don't recall. I'd have to look at the video, but I believe so.
Okay, and we have the video. I'm trying to. It's transferring over there? Okay, great. Why do you, okay. Have you watched the video today?
Yes.
Did you watch it with me?
No, I did not.
I have no idea where it is now, so.
Well, we're gonna have to mark it before we publish it.
Do you want me to put it on a flash drive for the court and mark
We're
it
going
that
to
way?
move it into evidence.
Sure, I'm working on pulling it up.
Yeah, sure.
Do you know the date that this was recorded?
I believe it was March 6th, 2024.
Would this be State's Exhibit 2?
I don't know.
I think it is. I'm going to show you what I'm going to mark as State's Exhibit 2. Can we display it?
Yeah, well, you're publishing it and, but go ahead. I mean, it doesn't
I'm
matter.
not sure what,
All right.
do you
fine.
want to see the video or no?
I do want to see the video.
Okay.
Just- Okay.
Does that look familiar to you?
Yes,
What are we looking at?
that's the hallway area of the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office, I believe, near the first secure entrance into our area.
Is there a reason that we don't have volume?
It does have a pre-record that's just audio, and at the time when I initiate the activation, then it has audio. And to be correct, I was in the hallway headed towards that area.
No,
where it's
why
secure.
don't we have audio? Does it take 30 seconds for the audio to come on?
It's when I activate it. So I believe it is set to a 30-second pre-video. And then once I activate the camera, the audio will
It
kick
comes
on.
on, okay.
Yes.
Lieutenant, so nice to meet you. I've got some evidence. You need to do this out here? Because I should probably write out something to go with this.
Like a chain of custody. Well, we would have a chain of custody there. So, yeah, come with me and we'll go.
That's my wife. Hi, that's me.
Are you okay with
Yes, sir.
Where was Marissa? Went back to her area? There you is. Oh. Beautiful stay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just so we have like a chain of custody. Wherever you want to go to get the evidence. Can go to the interview. It's fine.
Sure, I can fill out a statement or something. What's the statement? When I'm a witness, I'm called here as a witness to the bus trial. And I live in Arizona, so it's a long way.
Right.
And I wanted to. At the last minute, he said, okay, I want you to testify. No, I was the first evidence. And then they didn't want the others.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to walk around with this evidence forever.
That's fair. Whether you guys use it or not.
Yeah, I don't care what you do with it, I just don't want to have it. And they're 45 cartridges. They're like,
They're from the set?
no.
Okay.
No. You want to know the details?
Could you hear what the gentleman said?
Yes,
Was he asked if they were from the set?
yes,
What was his response?
no.
Or do you want me to
Well,
write it down?
let me start with, what is your name, sir?
Troy. Well, that's a great start.
Troy what?
Troy Teskey. T-E-S-A-E. I've got all kinds of identification. You should see them.
And we're getting called by
Retired police officer.
the defense. Defense, okay. But they didn't end up using it. Okay.
Here's my police ID. And then I'm also judge. You need to see that.
And we'll drop them. Okay, so they're gonna have you bring 45 rounds?
Yeah, and at the last minute,
They talked to
The
her,
defense.
him on the phone. They were good, they said that they're gonna have somebody pick it up from Arizona, which they never did. Okay, so he brought it out here just in case.
thank you, this is my story.
Okay, but get it out. Don't want it anymore. This is,
Sir, do you recall this conversation?
Yes, I do.
Do you know when Mr. Teskey is talking about being called as a witness in the Gutierrez trial, do you recall which side he was being called by?
I only learned that when he identified that.
What side?
On the defense side.
And when he said that he brought ammunition, but they didn't want to use it, was he referring to the prosecution or the defense?
I-
Do you have any basis to know that?
Well, if he doesn't, I'm assuming he'll tell me.
believe it's the defense.
Anyway, yeah.
all right, I want to go.
They told me to. The defense attorney said, hey, why don't you bring those rounds? And I thought, and 2 times, Hancock and then Morrissey. Hancock first said back on November 5th. And, November 5th, 2021, which was a week after the shooting. Seth Kinney called me, you know Seth? Everybody seems to know Seth here, but Seth, he was a friend of mine. And Seth Kinney called me from Hancock's office. She was a detective at the time. And he said, "You're on the record. I want to know what's going on with you, because I have these rounds from, it's the same batch that came from Joe Swanson."
Okay.
You know him too?
Yeah, I know of everybody.
I've also
Dealt with this case a lot.
The other perfect person to what's your first name?
Marissa.
Marissa? Oh,
Yeah, I apologize. I'm the crime scene technician.
all right. Well, I better jot that down. And I have some good notes on it. So my big concern was having they said, "Oh, okay." I said, "I have these rounds. I have a batch, a whole bunch of rounds."
Okay.
Or a bunch. And then I said, "Well, you probably don't want me to send you the whole batch. You want me to just pull something out and send you a picture." So I took a picture with my phone, sent it to Seth, and he was in the office with Hancock. And they looked at it, and Seth said, "Yeah, this is evidence from the accidental shooting." The accident.
And when you say they're from the same batch of
Yes.
live rounds?
Yes.
Okay.
It's if you know the case, Bell Reed had a whole bunch of live rounds.
Yes.
And Seth and Fell went to Yellowstone 1884, 1883. And he was teaching people how to shoot with these rounds.
Right.
Then they left there and they went together from Arizona. And then they came back and went to another set, which was
Sir, why did your video end there?
Because I walked out of the interview and was attempting to, or I did contact Detective Hancock to see who this individual was and why he was there turning in evidence, like he called it.
Okay. Did you know what it was evidence of?
He mentioned that it was tied to the Rust case.
Well, did he say in the video that it was not from the set of Rust?
No,
You didn't hear him say that?
I don't recall him saying that.
Yeah, I stopped it and I asked you what he said. Do you
Oh, I'm
remember
sorry.
giving that testimony?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry, yes,
So the gentleman said on the video, it was not from the set of Rust.
yes,
Okay. And you called Corporal Hancock, right?
correct.
And do you recall the conversation you had with her?
Yes, I asked her, an individual's here, gave her the name. I said, he claims that he has evidence. How do you want me to proceed turning it in and documenting it? Or if she was available to come over and interview him. And at that time, you guys were still involved in the Hannah Reed case. So she was unavailable and she asked that it be documented and she would have to do further investigation onto it and interviews.
Okay. I'll pass the witness. I don't know if you have any questions.
I have a few questions.
Do you want me to disconnect? Do you want me to leave it here?
I don't, yeah.
You don't need it? Okay.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
The witness that was in the precinct told you he was a retired police officer, correct?
Yes,
He offered to make a statement multiple times, correct?
yes,
Told you he was a witness multiple times, correct?
he did mention that.
Yeah. Told you he had evidence multiple times?
He did call it evidence, yes, but we had to confirm that is in fact evidence, which is why I relayed to Detective Hancock that she needed to conduct an interview with him.
And what did Detective Hancock say on the phone? Tell me everything about that conversation.
They were still at the trial and that she would follow up with him and the evidence as well.
And that would have really messed up the trial, right? If they had taken that evidence and vouchered it and let anybody know, right?
I'm sorry, rephrase that?
That would have messed up the trial, right?
I don't believe it was used in the trial because it was never collected on our investigation.
And when Ms. Popple comes into the room, or when your camera comes into the room, she says, I've dealt with this case a lot, right?
Yes,
And Teskey says, you're the perfect person, right?
yes,
And it was obvious from the conversation that Ms. Popple knew who Joe Swanson was, who Seth Kenny was, right?
yeah, she was familiar with them.
Yeah. Of him continued, correct?
I believe he was speaking on his own accord. We weren't conducting an interview. He was just there to turn in the evidence that he claimed he had.
Oh, that's not that. So that's your testimony, sir, that if law enforcement is sitting with the witness and the witness is giving information and law enforcement's asking questions and the witness continues to give information, that's not an interview?
Law enforcement wasn't asking questions. That was our crime scene tech.
No, not a single question was asked in that entire body cam?
I don't believe that I asked a question pertaining to the case other than believing it was evidence that was already part of the Hannah Reed case, and there was already a chain of custody until after he began disclosing where the evidence came from. That's when I learned that it wasn't actually part of that investigation, or it wasn't collected by our agency. It wasn't our actual evidence that was collected.
Right, and I don't have all of your police reports for all of your cases every time you get evidence, right? But fair to say sometimes evidence is developed by people coming into the precinct and turning in evidence?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And you write in your report, it should be noted that this is not actual evidence. That's what you write in your report.
I believe pertaining to our initial investigation.
It should be noted that this is not actual evidence from the death investigation collected by SFSO detectives. That's what you wrote, right?
Correct, and it wasn't collected by our detectives for the investigation. The initial investigation.
I don't understand that. Can you explain that to me?
So the evidence that was brought, I was indicating because we didn't know if it was tied to the investigation. And Detective Hancock asked that we tie it to a separate case number until further investigation could be completed. So I didn't want someone or anyone to assume that it was actually evidence that we collected tied to this investigation.
And so that was at the direction of Detective Hancock?
No, I wrote that on my own accord.
Well, you may have written that sentence on your own accord, but I think as you just testified, Detective Hancock, who was at the courthouse with Ms. Morrissey at the time, directed you to put it under a different identification number, correct?
Correct, pending further investigation.
Okay. You were involved, actually, you're copied on some emails with evidence viewing in this case.
I believe so, yes.
Right. You have no reason to believe that law enforcement ever showed this evidence to the defense, correct?
Correct.
I have nothing further for this witness.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, this witness is excused. Next witness?
I don't think I have any other witnesses.
All
I'm
right.
happy to provide the information myself.
All right, we're going to take a bathroom break and we'll be back in 3:30, okay? Or 3:25, okay? Thank you. We're in recess.
Okay, fine.
Okay, we've got a break. Sounds like Morris.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on our Alec Baldwin trial stream. I'm here to tell you about our sponsor, Truth Finder, one of
I
the
think
largest...
Morrissey will be testifying after the break. She's the blonde, short-haired prosecutor who looks like Denise Crosland, who played Tasha Yar on Star Trek in her younger days, but I've seen her in some roles since reaching middle age, and she I tell you, she looks just like her. Let me see if I can find a photo of her. Okay, this is a photo of Denise Crosby, and let me see about pulling up. Carrie Morrissey. Let's see. Okay. Oops, I need to get rid of a tab to... Okay, or more than one tab? Okay, let's get rid of one more tab. Okay. Oops. Let's see. Okay, there's Denise Crosby, and here is Carrie Morrissey. So let me just... Okay, where did my Denise Crosby tab go? Okay, let's try that again. Okay, that's too big. Let's see. Okay, we have Carrie Morrissey, and we have Denise Crosby. Don't they look similar? Anyway, let's go back over to Law and Crime. Close my tabs. Oh, I discovered the missing tab. Okay. So, yeah. Something is making noise. Oh, I was going to watch the Worldwide Privacy Tour from South Park on another tab, and it started to play when I closed the other tab. Let's look at Twitter and see what the feeling is, because most people can't believe what they're seeing here. Okay, Lobo says Carrie Morrissey should be called before the bar, if for nothing else, for sheer childishness. Well, if I have to dig through my boxes, does the defense have to dig through their boxes? Repeating unprofessional behavior. I'm surprised the judge tolerates it. Fee says, I'll tell you something, a lawyer having something dropped on them at the last second at trial and being able to handle it with swiftness is no mean feat. Great work. This isn't really so much the defense doing well as the prosecution doing poor. Okay, Danny says the defense office asked the officer who took possession of the evidence if that evidence was ever shown to them. Answer is no. Now the judge is going to put lead prosecutor on the stand under oath and question her about disclosure. This is so bizarre. I can't quite make out how this name should be pronounced. Looks like NRT Murat. At least they should, because it was someone dropped off by something with a claim which he wasn't even followed up to. Not to mention the source of ammunition has nothing to do with Alex Baldwin being guilty for negligence or not. Let's see. Oh. Pretty Lies and Alibis says the prosecutor in the Rust trial is about to take the stand after it was revealed in court that she was a part of the decision to put the ammo brought in during the trial under a different file. Yeah, that one sounds kind of it may be innocent, but it kind of also can be interpreted as they were trying to conceal evidence. So Kaylee Spin Vixen says, and Sparrow comes in with the boss move requesting sequestration of the witnesses, include Morrissey. Ailey Caven says, I mean, the prosecutor is going to pretty much just lie to save her ass.
We're back on the record.
The report indicated that you wanted me under oath, and I'm happy to do that. Where would you like me?
Well, okay, so just clear, you're a witness, okay? So you can say oath or whatever, but are you calling yourself as a witness? Or do you want Mr. Spiro to call you as a witness?
It doesn't matter to me. How do you want to do it?
I don't think it's necessary, frankly, for this evidentiary record for me to call Ms. Morrissey. I know what happened, and the court knows what happened. I don't think we need anything further.
Okay, do you want to call yourself as a witness? No, well, just a minute. So he's willing, as I understand it, to rest now, under oath, if you don't want it.
No, I'm happy to.
Okay, so not only happy to, I don't, it doesn't matter to me whether you call yourself as a witness. It doesn't matter to the defense whether you call yourself as a witness. So if you're calling yourself as a witness, there's no one here that's requiring you to be called as a witness.
The information, everything that happened in this regard, especially as it pertains to me, needs to come out in the public.
All right, so you're calling yourself as a witness.
And I am, and it was my understanding that the court indicated to me previously that you wanted me to testify. I understand you've now changed your mind. I think it's a good idea if I do it. Where would you like me?
Okay.
Do you want me here at the podium?
No, on the
Okay,
witness.
sure.
All right, Ms. Morrissey voluntarily calling herself as a witness without any requirement by the court to do so, or Mr. Spiro asking her to. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, go ahead.
During my investigation of this case and my review of the evidence in this case, I came to understand that there was a large batch of live ammunition that was in the possession of Thel Reed, Hannah Gutierrez's father. I also understood from all of the evidence and testimony that a portion of that batch of ammunition that belonged to Thel Reed was taken by Thel Reed and Seth Kinney to the 1883 Cowboy Training Camp. When that was over, leftover ammunition was taken back to PDQ props. Seth Kinney took some of the ammunition from that container that he had brought back from Texas and turned it into the sheriff's department. And it appeared to me that he did it to try to exonerate himself. They took it from Mr. Kinney and they tagged it into evidence under the Rust case. Law enforcement then executed a search warrant at PDQ Props and they took the entire container. And I will say that I do agree, as I recall, although I don't have it in front of me, I do agree that gave them everything so that they would have it and could tag it into evidence. Portions of that ammunition were then sent to the FBI for testing so that they could be compared to the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust. The FBI testing demonstrated that the live rounds that were taken from PDQ Props that were originally in Texas did not match the live rounds on the set of Rust. And that's testimony that we heard during the Gutierrez trial. So what ended up happening was Mr. Bowles, Ms. Gutierrez's lawyer, put Mr. Teskey on a witness list and was intending to call him as a witness to the Gutierrez trial. I conducted a pretrial interview of Mr. Teskey, and I want to back up. I did at this point have some understanding that Mr. Teskey had had contact with law enforcement regarding these rounds that he still had in Arizona. So these are rounds that never left Arizona. They were always in the possession of Thel Reed and Troy Teskey. They never went to Texas. They never came to New Mexico. That's what all of the evidence indicated. So I understood that Detective Hancock had communication with Mr. Teskey about trying to get those rounds, and Detective Hancock was unable to get those rounds from Mr. Teskey. I did not find that particularly concerning because those rounds had never left Arizona. The filming of Rust was in the state of New Mexico. And the rounds that were taken from PDQ went from Arizona to Texas to Albuquerque. So ammunition that is in the state of Arizona that has never left Arizona did not strike me that it had significant evidentiary value. Then, and I will say, I believe I actually saw a photo of it. At that point in time, I was able to look at the ammunition myself and it was visibly dissimilar than the rounds from the set of rust. We then cut to November of 2023. Mr. Bowles has put Mr. Teskey on a witness list for the Hannah Gutierrez case. We conducted a pretrial interview with Mr. Teskey on November 2nd of 2023. At that point in time, he brought up that he was still in possession of these live rounds that were Thel Reed's live rounds that had never left the state of Arizona. I then, when he started, I think he indicated during the pretrial interview that they were from the same batch that was sourced from Joe Swanson. And I then said, we should get those from you. I had a conversation with Detective Hancock after that pretrial interview about how we could get the rounds from Mr. Teskey, and we were trying to figure out if we could send a local law enforcement agency to pick them up. I was then decided that I needed to figure out if that was necessary, since they had never left Arizona, and up to that point, it was my impression that they did not match the live rounds from the set of rust. I then, as I recall, reached out to Mr. Bowles. He and I had a conversation about whether or not the rounds should be tested by the FBI. And I was still trying to figure out if I could get the rounds from Arizona to New Mexico. So I asked Mr. Bowles to please send me a photograph of the rounds from Troy Teskey so that I could see with my eyes whether they were even remotely similar. If they were similar, I could go through the steps of obtaining the ammunition, connecting probably with local law enforcement, having a local law enforcement agency go to Mr. Teskey's residence and collect them. I didn't want to do that if they didn't look anything like the rounds from the set of rust, because all six rounds from the set of rust are identical to each other. So when I had this conversation with Mr. Bowles, he provided me the photograph that I showed this morning. And this is it was my understanding that this was a photograph from Troy Teskey. So Troy and I don't communicate. He's a defense witness. I can't communicate with a defense witness. So Mr. Bowles, as I recall, texted me this photo, and this is a photo that Mr. Teskey took at my request so that I could determine whether this ammunition was related in any way to the set of rust, because it never left the state of Arizona. So if it never left the state of Arizona, the only way that it is relevant to the rust investigation is if it has any similarity to the live rounds that were found on the set of rust, because we were at that point trying to figure out the source of the live rounds. When I received this photograph from Mr. Bowles, I could immediately tell that these are very dissimilar from the live rounds that were found on the set of rust. They have brass primers. So this is what was presented to the prosecution as the rounds that were in Mr. Teskey's possession. They have brass primers and not silver primers. One of them, the one on the left, appears to be a Starline brass casing, but they have truncated cone projectiles. We had seen ammunition that looked exactly like this, not exactly, but very, very similar. And that ammunition was the ammunition that was collected from the sheriff's department and went to the FBI for testing and was determined not to be similar in any way to the live rounds on the set of Rust. So when I saw this photograph, I could see that it was not at all similar to the live rounds on the set of Rust. And I decided not to take any steps to collect this ammunition because it was in Arizona, had never come to New Mexico, and didn't match the live rounds on the set of Rust. So what ends up happening is Mr. Teskey is called to New Mexico by Mr. Bowles to testify at the Gutierrez trial. And you can hear on the video that the court heard Mr. Teskey say, the defense attorney, that's not me, asked him to bring samples of that ammunition. According to Mr. Teskey, he brought the samples of the ammunition, showed them to the defense attorney, and the defense attorney said, I don't want those. I'm not going to use those. And by the way, I'm not going to call you as a witness. So Mr. Teskey sat in court during the trial. And then at some point, contacted the deputies downstairs and said, I have this ammunition. So he tried to give it to the defense attorney, who's the person who asked him to bring it. The defense attorney said no. And he then tried to get a hold of Detective Hancock, who was not available because she was with me. So then he ends up going to the sheriff's department and he leaves the ammunition at the sheriff's department. I was contacted, I don't think it was the same day, but I'm not 100% sure. It's possible that it was, by Detective Hancock, and she indicated that Troy Teskey had dropped off ammunition at the sheriff's department. Because I had already asked for a photograph of it, I believed that that ammunition was going to look like the photograph that Mr. Bowles had sent me. Corporal Hancock indicated that she was going to tag them into evidence and she was going to create what she called a doc report. And I said, great, do that. I was not aware at that point in time that a doc report would not have the same case number as Rust. I was not aware at that point in time that it would not be linked to the Rust case number. I understood that he had dropped off ammunition that I believed to not look similar to the ammunition from the set of Rust. And I had no idea that it wasn't going to have the same case number. I want to show the court, though, when Mr. Teskey showed up to testify with the ammunition that Mr. Bowles told him to bring to the state of New Mexico, he was not called as a witness, and Mr. Bowles said, I'm not taking that ammunition from you. That's why. Because these are photographs from Hannah Gutierrez's cell phone extraction, and they show spot-on match for the live rounds found on the set of Rust. This is clearly the reason that Mr. Bowles said, you and your ammunition better get out of here, because it would not have hurt the case, the state's case against Hannah Gutierrez. It would have been the best evidence I could have hoped for. These look exactly like the ammunition, the actual ammunition that we have in evidence. And they do look like the 3 rounds that are in that envelope. So when Mr. Teskey couldn't get Mr. Bowles to take them because they were the best evidence against his client, he took them over to the sheriff's department. And when he dropped them at the sheriff's department, I was told that there was going to be a report. There was a report. I assumed they looked like these. And Detective Hancock indicated to me that because he dropped them off and he didn't wait for her, she was then going to try to follow up with him, take a statement from him, so that we could get some idea where they came from, what the relevance was, if there was any relevance at all. And he never returned her phone calls. And that's all of the information that I can give the court, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
May I ask a few questions, Your Honor? When you took over this case, the investigator handling the case, Mr. Schilling, left the case, correct?
At my request, yes.
The paralegal that was handling this case with you left the case, Mr. Tatt?
At my request, yes.
Well, the first prosecutor that was working with you on this case, you selected, correct?
I did.
And he resigned too?
I wouldn't say that he resigned, no.
Okay. He didn't stay on the case for the Alec Baldwin trial, correct?
No, and he indicated that that was because he represented a labor union, that's a national labor union, and he was not expecting the trial to be set so quickly. He wasn't expecting it to be set in July. So when he realized that the trial was going to be set in July, he was going to be in collective bargaining agreements for his national labor union, and he wasn't going to be able to have enough time.
Erlinda Johnson, the next prosecutor selected, resigned from the case today,
She did.
based in part on the conduct we're here discussing, correct?
I believe that Ms. Johnson Ms. Johnson didn't want my understanding is that she didn't agree with the decision to have a public hearing.
On July 1st in this matter, you served a certificate of compliance with 5501, correct?
I did.
And you've never turned over the report or any of the evidence that we're talking about here at this hearing, correct?
Let's take it one at a time. I did not turn over the report. I didn't have a copy of the report. The rounds that were left at the Sheriff's Department by Troy Teskey, I have absolutely no reason to believe that they are relevant to the incident that took place on the set of Rust. These are rounds that were in the possession of Bell Reed and never left the state of Arizona.
You also did not allow the defense to view that evidence at any point during our request to review evidence in this case?
I had never seen it, and I didn't realize that it wasn't under the same case number because I'm not a law enforcement officer and I don't work at the Sheriff's Department. But you are right.
And you concede that they are Starline brass, silver 45?
I can. And this is the best evidence against Hannah Gutierrez.
Yeah, you've said that a couple of times. Any favorable evidence you understand as a prosecutor has to be turned over to the defense, correct?
I do.
Any evidence that could be used as a defense to potentially be favorable has to be turned over to the defense.
Absolutely.
So the third Hague report that never got turned over to the defense, you understand that that's Brady evidence?
I did, yes.
Okay. And you also failed to turn that over in this case as well, correct?
And let me give you a full answer to your question. When the second Hague report came in, and I provided all of this to the defense, I sent it to the person who is managing the discovery server and asked them to upload it. It wasn't until I realized during pretrial interviews that it wasn't there that there was a problem with it. So I then attempted to figure out what the problem was, and it was indicated to me that it appeared that the former paralegal who was working for the special prosecutor had removed it. So we then immediately provided it. Then during the pretrial interview of Mr. Hague, it was brought to my attention that the defense did not have the August 31st report that indicated that the gun functioned fine, perfectly fine. And that was provided immediately. I went back, I checked my email, I could see that I received it from Mr. Haig and failed to forward it on to be uploaded. And I provided it as soon as I was aware that you did not have it.
The fact that nobody at the Hannah Gutierrez retrial cross-examined Mr. Haig about the report didn't clue you into the fact that nobody had the report?
Actually, it didn't, and I'd like to address that. The reason that it didn't clue me in is because Hannah Gutierrez's defense was that the gun worked perfectly. The defense in Hannah Gutierrez was never interested in any evidence that there was an issue with the gun, because if there was an issue with the gun, it damaged her case. So what you could see, if you watched the trial or saw any of the transcripts, the defense actually brought in their own expert to say that the gun worked perfectly. So they had no interest in that information.
And actually, you elicited testimony from Mr. Haig at that trial that was inconsistent, at least partially inconsistent, as the court's aware, with his third report, correct?
Tell me what you're referring to and I'll answer your question.
Well, there was a whole hearing about this where you saw this and you saw me go back and forth with Mr. Haig for 25 minutes. So
I agree, but I need to know what you're talking about for me to answer your question.
Okay, if you can't answer the question, you can't answer the question. I'll move on.
I'm happy to, but
You say that the extent of the communications you have about the doc report, as you relay it to the court, is that all you said in response was, "Great, do that." That's your testimony?
yeah, I assumed that it was going to be tied to the same case number. So I said, great, do it, file a report.
No follow-up questions?
No, because I had a picture of the ammunition that didn't match the ammunition from the set of Rust.
No concerns in your mind when you got the case file and you turned it over to us and it wasn't included?
Absolutely not. There's a terabyte of discovery. I didn't know whether this 2-page police report had been provided. And in addition to that, I had no reason to believe, and still have no reason to believe, that those rounds have anything to do with these cases.
As I asked you about Mr. Haig yesterday when Ms. Popple testified, you would agree with me that her testimony under oath was false?
What part of her testimony was false? And I'll answer.
That she said that these rounds don't look anything like the rounds on the set when you elicited that testimony.
I agree with you, and I didn't realize that there were rounds that looked like that.
It's okay. In any event, when the court, and you never tested those rounds either, correct?
Any of the rounds that came from Mr. Teskey? No, because they came in just a few months ago.
And the court asked you actually one question that I want to address, which is the court said to you, well, what's interesting to me, to be quite honest, is that yesterday you didn't even want to do a written reply. You wanted to just give an oral response. And what you said to the court was, I never saw these, I've never seen these, and I never saw the report. I have absolutely never seen these until this morning. Do you remember saying that to the court?
With regard to the 3 Starline brass, with regard to the 3 cartridges that appear to be similar to Rust, yes.
Well,
I never saw them until today.
Well, but you said also, I never saw the report, right?
I never did.
Right, but don't you think, given your duty of candor to this court, that that's awfully misleading to not tell the court at that point that you knew about this when it occurred long ago?
That I knew about what?
You knew that Mr. Teskey had turned in this evidence, that you knew that the report would have existed because you just told this court that the doc report was okayed by you.
Sure.
Don't you think it was misleading to this court to not just say at that point, you know, just so you know, I know about this. I knew about this then. I was involved.
I did not intend to mislead the court. My understanding of what was dropped off at the sheriff's department is on this computer screen, and it looks absolutely nothing like the live rounds from the set of Rust.
The truth of this matter is you don't like Mr. Baldwin very much, do you?
You know, that is absolutely untrue. I actually really appreciate Mr. Baldwin's movies. I really appreciated the acting that he did on Saturday Night Live, and I really appreciate his politics.
You told one of the witnesses who disagreed with you during an interview that you thought Mr. Baldwin was a cocksucker?
I do not recall saying that. I know that that was something that Mr. Baldwin would say on the set of Rust. I don't recall saying that.
Do you deny that under oath?
Without having more information, I can tell you that I do not recall ever saying that. And if I did say it, I invite you to point it out to me.
You called him an arrogant prick to another witness.
To who? To what witness?
I'm asking you, did you call him an arrogant prick during a witness interview?
I don't believe I did. I don't recall.
Do you deny that?
Without knowing what you're talking about, all I can tell you is that I can't respond if I don't know what you're talking about.
And you said also to witnesses that you would teach him a lesson.
I never said to witnesses that I would teach him a lesson. Absolutely not. In fact, Mr. Spiro, I want to give a full response to your question. I made every effort in this case to resolve this case with your client in a very favorable way for him.
All right, I'm going to move to strike this. It's not responsive.
It is
Well, I don't
responsive.
want to talk about plea negotiations.
Yeah, and it's not responsive. So I have no further
All right,
questions.
do you have any follow-up testimony? All right,
I want to say I have no recollection of calling him any of those names. I have invited the defendant to tell me what he's talking about, and he has declined. I want the court to take notice of that.
all right. Thank you. You may step down. All right, any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
All right, argument, let's not, 15 minutes aside sufficient?
I don't even think that is necessary, frankly.
Do you want to make argument?
Further argument.
All right,
don't think either side needs further argument on this time.
all right. So dismissal with prejudice is a very extreme sanction. And case law is very clear that because it's very extreme, I have to go through every single element, and I have to make I'm seeing the defendant must show that the prosecution suppressed evidence, the evidence was favorable to the accused, and the evidence was material to the defense. So let's go through the elements. Suppression of evidence. The definition of suppression of elements, this is Case versus Hatch, is while the first element requires proof that the prosecution suppressed or withheld the evidence in question, it does not require a finding of bad faith or any other culpable state of mind on the part of the prosecutor. This prong is satisfied. The Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office and the prosecution failed to disclose the supplemental report to defense and provide defense an opportunity to inspect the rounds collected into evidence that Mr. Teske gave. Is the evidence favorable to the accused? The second Brady element is whether the suppressed evidence was favorable to the accused, either as impeachment or exculpatory evidence. This prong is satisfied. The suppressed evidence is favorable to the accused. It is impeachment evidence, has even been offered in this trial as impeachment evidence, and is potentially exculpatory to the defense. Critically, the exculpatory value cannot be analyzed at such a late juncture because of the non-disclosure. Is the evidence material? While post-trial discovery of evidence under Brady requires a reasonable probability that the result of the proceeding would have been different, discovery of evidence during trial requires an evaluation of whether the late tender has impeded the effective use of evidence in such a way that it impacts the fundamental fairness of the proceedings, and that is State versus Huerta Castro. This evidence is material. The late discovery of this evidence during trial has impeded the effective use of evidence in such a way that it has impacted the fundamental fairness of the proceedings. The defense is not in a position to test the state's theory as to the source of the live rounds that killed Ms. Hutchins. I'm also going to take a look at Harper, State versus Harper. The assessment of sanctions depends upon the extent of the government's culpability, weighed against the amount of prejudice to the state, quoting Chenard. Let's go through culpability. Our case law generally provides that the refusal to comply with a district court's discovery order only rises to the level of exclusion or dismissal where the state's conduct is especially culpable, such as where evidence is unilaterally withheld by the state in bad faith, or all access to the evidence is precluded by state intransigence. The state is highly culpable for its failure to provide this discovery to the defendant. The state unilaterally withheld a supplemental report. Santa Fe County Sheriff's Officer made the decision, and apparently also with the prosecutor, pursuant to Hancock's testimony, that the evidence was of no evidentiary value and failed to connect the evidence to the instant case. The case agent, as well as pursuant to Hancock's testimony, Ms. Morrissey, was aware of the new evidence and yet did not make an effort to disclose it to defense. The state's willful withholding of this information was intentional and deliberate. If this conduct does not rise to the level of bad faith, it certainly comes so near to bad faith as to show signs of scorching. Prejudice. When discovery has been produced late, prejudice does not accrue unless the evidence is material and the disclosure is so late that it undermines the defendant's preparation for trial. The court concludes that this conduct is highly prejudicial to the defendant. The jury has been sworn, jeopardy has attached, and this disclosure during the course of trial is so late that it undermines the defendant's preparation for trial. There is no way for the court to right this wrong. Lesser sanctions under Harper. Trial courts possess broad discretionary authority to decide what sanction to impose when a discovery order is violated. Versus Lemire. The sanction of dismissal is the only warranted remedy. The jury has been sworn. Dismissal is warranted in this case. The state has repeatedly made representations to defense and to the court that they were compliant with all their discovery obligations. Despite their repeated representations, they have continued to fail to disclose critical evidence to the defendant. Brady and Harper are satisfied. Court per State versus Lemire, where discovery violations inject needless delay into the proceedings, courts may impose meaningful sanctions to effectuate their inherent power and promote efficient judicial administration. The state's discovery violation has injected a needless, incurable delay into the instant jury trial. Dismissal with prejudice is warranted to ensure the integrity of the judicial system and the efficient administration of justice. The motion to dismiss with prejudice is granted. Now, with respect to the jury, I don't imagine you all want to return on Monday. I will take care of the jury.
Thank you.
We are in recess.
Well, he certainly looks relieved there. I certainly didn't see that coming when I got up today.
I'm going to.
Thank you all for your help.
Somehow I don't think that the prosecution is going to be rushing out to the press conference that you can get the defense bill.
Yeah.
And we have the spinning wheel of doom. Oh, well. Well, I wonder how long it'll take the defense to get out to the microphones. Let's take a look.
Opportunity to inspect the rounds collected into evidence that Mr. Teskey gave. Is the evidence favorable to the accused? The second Brady element is whether the suppressed evidence was favorable to the accused, either as impeachment or exculpatory evidence. This prong is satisfied. The suppressed evidence is favorable to the accused. It is impeachment evidence, has even been offered in this trial as impeachment evidence, and is potentially exculpatory to the defense. Critically, the exculpatory value cannot be analyzed at such a late juncture because of the non-disclosure. Is the evidence material? While post-trial discovery of evidence under Brady requires a reasonable probability that the result of the proceeding would have been different, discovery of evidence during trial is an evaluation of whether the late tender has impeded the effective use of evidence in such a way that it impacts the fundamental fairness of the proceedings, and that is State versus Huerta Castro. This evidence is material. The late discovery of this evidence during trial has impeded the effective use of evidence in such a way that it has impacted the fundamental fairness of the proceedings. The defense is not in a position to test the state's theory as to the source of the live rounds that killed Ms. Hutchins. I'm also going to take a look at Harper, State versus Harper. The assessment of sanctions depends upon the extent of the government's culpability, weighed against the amount of prejudice to the state, quoting Chenard. Let's go through culpability. Our case law generally provides that the refusal to comply with a district court's discovery order only rises to the level of exclusion or dismissal where the state's conduct is especially culpable at faith, or all access to the evidence is precluded by state intransience. The state is highly culpable for its failure to provide this discovery to the defendant. The state unilaterally withheld a supplemental report. Santa Fe County Sheriff's Officer made the decision, and apparently also with the prosecutor, as pursuant to Hancock's testimony, that the evidence was of no evidentiary value and failed to connect the evidence to the instant case. The case agent, as well as pursuant to Hancock's testimony, Ms. Morrissey, was aware of the new evidence and yet did not make an effort to disclose it to defense. The state's willful withholding of this information was intentional and deliberate. If this conduct does not rise to the level of bad faith, it certainly comes so near to bad faith as to show signs of scorching. Prejudice. When discovery has been produced late, prejudice does not accrue unless the evidence is material and the disclosure is so late that it undermines the defendant's preparation for trial. The court concludes that this conduct is highly prejudicial to the defendant. The jury has been sworn, jeopardy has attached, and this disclosure during the course of trial is so late that it undermines the defendant's preparation for trial. There is no way for the court to right this wrong. Lesser sanctions under Harper. Trial courts possess broad discretionary authority to decide what sanction to impose when a discovery order is violated, State versus Lanier. The sanction of dismissal is the only warranted remedy. The jury has been sworn, jeopardy has attached, and a mistrial would not be based upon manifest necessity. Further, the sanction of dismissal is warranted in this case. The state has repeatedly made representations to defense and to the court that they were compliant with all their discovery obligations. Despite their repeated representations, they have continued to fail to disclose critical evidence to the defendant. Brady and Harper are satisfied. Dismissal with prejudice is warranted. Court also has inherent power. Per State versus Lemire, where discovery violations inject needless delay into the proceedings, courts may impose meaningful sanctions to effectuate their inherent power and promote efficient judicial administration. The state's discovery violation has injected a needless, incurable delay into the instant jury trial. Dismissal with prejudice is warranted to ensure the integrity of the judicial system and the efficient administration of justice. Your motion to dismiss with prejudice is granted. Now, with respect to the jury, I don't imagine you all want to return on Monday. I will take care of the jury.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We are in recess. I'm going to.
Dismissal.
Go ahead.
Thank you all for your help. Stay all okay.
Again, the case against Alec Baldwin has just been dismissed with prejudice, meaning that the state can't bring the involuntary manslaughter charge again to Baldwin. Lots of emotions again from the entire Baldwin family, especially Alec there getting visibly emotional as he's been fighting this case now for years. Now, our Anjanette Levy is on the ground outside of the courthouse in Santa Fe. We're going to try to get her on air after the break, but we are going to hit that quick break, but we have a lot more coming your way again on the other side.
Get live on the air, and then if Harry Morrison comes out, we'll try to flow with it. Mark.
Hear what the defense has to say. Seems to me that we need to do that before we sign off for the day. Baldwin thing again. So, does it really make a big difference? I don't know. I do feel bad for Hannah's family. Not seeing anything revolutionary on Twitter.
What's that? Oh, it's gonna do something you're doing right now? No. Oh yeah, I'm gonna do.
Oh.
No, she's not gonna say words. She's gonna run. So.
Well. Oh.
Hey, I'm just standing around waiting.
Okay, let's hear your reaction.
I mean, this raises so many questions about this prosecution, all the public money.
Okay, we should have IFB now.
That we made along the way. And at the end of the day, it's over for Alec Baldwin. Yeah, great.
Sir, do I have to have this like that?
See. We listen to some commentary over on Danny On's.
Extended coverage in the Alec Baldwin trial. If you're just now tuning in, you've missed a lot as the judge ruled just moments ago to dismiss the case. Now, we've learned Baldwin has left the courtroom and the courthouse with his family as they were visibly emotional earlier after the case was dismissed. And it was dismissed with prejudice, meaning that the state can't bring the involuntary manslaughter charge again against Alec Baldwin. And remember, he was facing 18 months in prison if he was convicted on that manslaughter charge. Now, we do have Anjanette Levy, who's live outside of the courthouse for us there. She's going to be giving us everything that we need to know. Anjanette, a lot has happened in these last few moments.
Yeah, a lot happened, Elizabeth, and I'll just take it from here. The judge dismissed this case with prejudice, as you mentioned, and she said that there's no way that the defense could recover from this. This was the only remedy, and that Alec Baldwin's defense team satisfied every prong necessary for this. As it became very clear that Judge Mary Marlowe Summer was going to dismiss this case with prejudice, Alec Baldwin's wife, Hilaria Baldwin, started crying, bursting into tears. Alec Baldwin appeared to be shaking, we could tell from behind. His lawyer, Luke Nikas, put his arm on his back and was kind of giving him the reassuring pat. He turned around after it was all over and he was just crying, sobbing, hugging his wife. We were ushered out of the courthouse. His brother appeared upset. Happy tears, of course, emotional tears of relief after this whole ordeal for them that's been going on for nearly 3 years now. I want to bring in John Day. He's here with me. John, we saw things today I've never seen in a courtroom. I've never seen a special prosecutor or any prosecutor for that matter during a trial, during a motion hearing in the middle of a trial, call herself as a witness, get up there and try to explain why she knew about something that should have been turned over to the defense and wasn't. And then we find out this bombshell that Erlinda Johnson, the other special prosecutor, resigned today. I actually saw her in the ladies' room after we came back from lunch briefly, and then she walked out and you didn't see her in the courtroom. So what do you think about what unfolded here today?
It's stunning. I've never seen anything like this. You have Erlinda Johnson, who is an incredibly well-regarded, ethical, professional lawyer, getting out of this case for some reason, and you have Carrie Morrissey, the special prosecutor, calling herself to the stand in a desperate effort to try to establish some kind of record for appeal. But this was like watching the Titanic go down with hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax dollars from New Mexico attached to it. It was a spectacular failure for the special prosecutors and an amazing win for Alec Baldwin, and that raises so many issues of prosecutorial misconduct that have to be answered.
And Erlinda Johnson, I mean, Morrissey said, Carrie Morrissey, and Alex Spiro really was grilling her. There are other special prosecutors that worked with you that resigned, and she explained how they resigned and why. Carrie Morrissey said it was Erlinda Johnson resigned, and she's somewhat new to the case, but that she resigned because she didn't agree with having a public hearing. Are you buying that?
You know, I don't know what her reasons were, but the fact is that a very well-regarded lawyer decided, I am not going to go down with this ship. And the issues that this raises are there'll be so many, it's going to go on for a while. It has issues for the Hannah Gutierrez Reed conviction,
yes,
information that was possibly withheld. Should that have come out for her trial? So it's not a good day for justice system in New Mexico.
Really bad too is the fact that Alexandria Hancock, the lead detective on the case, she knew about this. What in the heck was the harm in turning over this report. I mean, you look at it and you think it's not relevant, but that's not the standard. The standard is whether or not the defense thinks it's helpful or exculpatory. And so that should have just been handed over. I mean, what's the big deal? As they said, it's a 2-page report.
You answered the question. What was the harm in following the rules and doing things the way that you're supposed to do in an investigation? And that's why I say it raises so many questions about how this was handled, not only in the law enforcement investigation, which we know has been heavily criticized, but in everything that took place after that, how the case got to the special prosecutors, what they did with it. And I mean, the results speak for themselves. This was a disaster.
And it really was not, it was really, really stunning to watch this unfold today. I mean, there was the talk about this before lunch. They went and they got the body camera footage. Marissa Popple is on the body camera footage. She's well aware of these rounds. Troy Teskey he's there. He's saying they didn't come from the set of Rust, but I have this evidence and I want to turn it over. And they were aware of this back in 2021, November of 2021. They were aware of these rounds.
They were aware of it, and there's video of everyone talking about it and sort of laughing. And I think this raises, all these questions, and it's just there's no real answer for why this couldn't have been done properly. And I think there's going to have to be sort of an after-event investigation as to what took place and why.
I want to let our viewers know that we are trying to keep an eye on the exit here at the courthouse to see if Carrie Morrissey will be coming out. Also, I want to let our viewers know that Gloria Allred, who represents the family of Helena Hutchins, her family members who are in Ukraine, she left the court and I approached her and she said she will not be commenting at this time. John, I think it's important that we explain to the viewers because I think it could be a little bit confusing. The judge said that this did not allow the defense to investigate the source of the ammunition that killed Helena Hutchins. The special prosecution and the detectives contend, well, we already figured it out. It was Hannah Gutierrez Reed. The picture on her phone matched it perfectly. So the judge basically told them that's not good enough. They should have, basically you should have sent this stuff to the FBI. You should have disclosed it to the defense. Maybe they could have experts review it and look at it, examine it, test it for themselves. So now, do we not really know where the source of the ammo, what the source of the ammo was that killed Helena Hutchins?
We don't know, and that's the point that the judge was making. If the defense had known about this, it may not have led to anything, but the defense had a right to know about it. The defense had a right to delve into it, to investigate what was going on. And by the decisions made by law enforcement and the special prosecutor to keep that basically hidden, whether or not that was, it depends on what the intent, of course, was, but the result was the same. The defense didn't know about it. They couldn't send an investigator to look into it. And it may not have developed into anything that was exculpatory, but it might have.
But they had a duty to investigate
Exactly.
it. And Arizona, what's the harm in contacting law enforcement in Arizona, having them go pick it up, or even traveling yourself? If you've spent all of this money on the investigation, get on a plane or get in the car and drive to Arizona and meet with Troy Teskey.
This judge was angry, you could tell. And she was not happy at the way, and that's an understatement. She was not happy at the way the special prosecution was handled. And then to lose Erlinda Johnson today, of all days, speaks volumes about the disaster that this prosecution of Alec Baldwin has been.
I'm still stunned by what we've witnessed here today. I'm absolutely stunned. I've never seen, I don't think a lot of people, I actually reached out to other lawyers and I asked, have you ever seen anything like this? And they said no. They'd never seen anything like this. Where do we go from here as far as you work here?
Yeah,
I mean, so you've got this sheriff's office here. The judge basically told them, you screwed up. You didn't just screw up a little, you screwed up really, really bad.
Look, when an airplane crashes, there's a black box that you retrieve that has all the data in there, voice recordings, parameters, things like that. That's what they need in this case. They need a black box to figure out what happened and what kind of a disaster it was.
People are yelling in the background and I'm looking around to make sure I'm not missing somebody come out. We have Carrie Morrissey coming out. We're gonna walk over and see if we can get to her. Somebody's coming out here. So we're coming on, guys. Live TV, stuff like this happens sometimes. Can you give me a boost?
Sorry.
never left the state of Arizona. I understand that the court disagrees with me, and I respect the court's decision. There is absolutely no evidence that any of that ammunition is related to.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry, that's all right.
No, they had already speak.
Okay.
Somebody made a decision. Brian didn't know about it.
I'm
I'm
disappointed.
actually going. New, and then I found out I'm interviewing Sasha.
Yeah, it's our last minute. She's live on air right now. They took her live.
I believe that the importance of the evidence was misconstrued by the defense attorney.
Yep.
But
why are we casual? I kind of like
do you feel you let the Hutchins family down? Do you regret not turning over the Well, I didn't know that. Okay.
That doesn't deserve a
That
motion.
being the subject of today's hearing existed.
You still believe Mr. Baldwin was guilty?
That has never been a decision for me. That has always been a decision for the jury.
Did you let the Hutchins family down?
No, we didn't. We did everything humanly possible to bring justice to Helena and to her family, and we're proud of the work that we did. Again, we disagree with the court's decision, but we have to respect it.
Sheriff, do you have anything to add?
I don't.
What if Ms. Johnson stepped down?
Also, and I agree with the prosecutor.
Thank you, sir.
And Jared here as well. He says that he respects the court's decision.
That's a long.
We're going to try to catch up here a little bit.
That's not.
Goddamn Carrie.
You heard my testimony. Did you see my testimony in court?
What'd you think of that? Well, this was a disaster for the New Mexico judicial system. There's no other way to look at it. Stunning development.
3 live rounds.
And
So everybody, take it easy. Don't let anybody get arrested.
just 30 seconds to talk to it.
But I just did. You guys decided to step on me. What is it? It has separate pieces. So you did know. Sheriff, you heard my testimony today, right? My testimony is what I stand.
Give her a little space, guys.
My testimony is what I stand on.
How did you feel about the defense using them full for work?
No more.
Come on.
Do you understand? No more.
Do you believe that there will be any kind of consequences for what happened?
We're done.
All right, there you have it. I asked the sheriff if there would be any consequences for how this was handled. He says that decision has not been made yet. So it's a wait and see. But he said they still believe that this had nothing to do with this and that they're going to review this. This should be a massive learning experience. I have never seen a judge in all of my years in covering courts dress down a prosecutor like this. I've seen judges get really angry, not like this. This was something to watch. This was something to see. And I think everybody in law enforcement and anybody who's a prosecutor in this country needs to watch this and learn from it and know that the rules are prosecutors and detectives do not determine what is exculpatory. The case law is very clear. So we're going to walk back now. Sorry, I'm a little winded, everybody. Got my calisthenics in for the day. We're going to walk back to the plaza, see what else is going on here. But obviously you heard Carrie Morrissey saying she respects the judge's ruling, but she still stands by the fact that she believes that ammunition did not have anything to do with what happened on the set of Rust. It remains, but the question is, should there be some further investigation into this? That is the main question. Do they need to go back now, look at that ammo and try to trace it back to its source, and then finally determine whether the ammo did come from Seth Kenney? So there are still major questions that need to be answered in this case. So I am going to run around the plaza a little bit. I think I can maybe toss it back to Elizabeth in the studio, or I can go back over to John. Are we going back over to John? Yes. Hey, John, let's talk. So we just chased after Carrie Morrissey. She said that she respects the court's decision. They stand by the fact that they do not believe this was connected to Rust. I asked the sheriff whether or not he will review this case. And, you know, he said basically, I don't want to mess up his quote, that, you know, every case you can look at and learn from. I asked him if there would be consequences because of this, and he said he has not decided that yet. What does that tell you?
You know, as I said, this case needs like when you have a plane crash, there's a black box that gives you all the data about how the plane crashed. That's what this case needs. They need someone to go in there and figure out how did this disaster happen. And, you know, Carrie Morrissey, a long career in the state as a well-respected criminal defense lawyer and civil rights lawyer. So she's a very ethical professional lawyer. Something went wrong in this case. You lost Erlinda Johnson today, the other special prosecutor who had just joined the case. That's a question there. What happened to have Erlinda hit the eject button and get out of this plane before it crashed? So a lot of questions that still need to be answered. At the end of the day, Alec Baldwin's defense team did a remarkable job in defending him and raising all these questions. You had a judge who was ticked off at the way the special prosecutor handled the case. And the judge decided the only remedy here is to shut this down with no possibility of refiling. And so Alec Baldwin will sleep well tonight. And the people of New Mexico are out a lot of money in terms of the tax dollars that were spent prosecuting this disaster.
How much do you think Alec Baldwin's defense has cost?
I mean, this is a multi-million. I mean, this is a huge amount of money that he had to spend. But look at the result. I mean, you can't argue with the result that Alec Baldwin got. And you saw his reaction in the courtroom. And that's not acting. That's a genuine,
it was totally genuine
reaction. And he's lived with this. The reality is there's still a woman who's dead. There's a woman who's doing right now 18 months in the state women's prison. But this case also raises a lot of issues that are going to have to be dealt with on the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed appeal. And so there's more to this that hasn't ended with today's decision by the judge.
John Day, thank you so much. And we will actually try to get some more information about that. All right, Elizabeth, I'm going to toss it back to you in the studio, and we're going to see out here if we can find out any other additional information. So we'll send it back to you.
And Jeanette, thank you so much. Really appreciated a lot of stunning developments again today in the trial of Alec Baldwin, because again, the judge dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning that this charge cannot be brought against Alec Baldwin again. All right, we're going to take a quick break here at the Law and Crime Network, but we'll have much more from the ground in Santa Fe, New Mexico when we come back. Stay with us.
Well, I was hoping to hear from the defense, but they seem to be taking their time and coming out. Maybe Alec is too emotional right now to speak. Let's see. Trying to look and see if we've got any reaction. Let's see. See if Court TV has anybody right now. Yep, they're on a break too. Well, I'm not sure that there's really much to say about this at this point. I certainly wasn't expecting the case to get dismissed. I mean, every trial you get at least one, if not several, motions to dismiss, and this is the first time we've ever seen one granted. So, I mean, I have some sympathy for Alec Baldwin because I don't think he meant to do any harm. But under the definition of involuntary manslaughter, he fits the definition, an unintentional, non-malicious taking of a human life. And he did that. But would any public good be done by him being in jail? Probably not. 18 months is a slap on the wrist, and he'll pay in terms of a hefty settlement on a lawsuit. So he did. Let me see. So we had Cat's Gallery, who was in Santa Fe today, or was it Santa Fe? Anyway, she went by the courthouse and she missed seeing Baldwin arrive by 20 minutes. So that's as close as anybody here has got to seeing one of our big cases. So, okay, well, let's end it here. And I hope everybody has a great weekend. And we'll be looking for the next trial to stream, which I thought was going to be Alexi Treviso, but it looks like her trial is postponed.
All right, welcome back to Law and Crime Network. If you're just now tuning in, very stunning developments in the trial of Alec.
So, oh, there he is. He's crying. I think he was pretty scared yesterday. There were some things that was really looking grim for him. So this is a big turnaround. So not sure what the next trial is going to be, because it looks like Alexi Treviso is going to be delayed because there was an appeal of a decision that was made, which was a bad decision. It was regarding statements that she made in the presence of her mother and doctors and police. And they said, oh, doctor-patient privilege. Yes, but there's no doctor-patient-mother privilege. And so she waived her privilege by talking in front of the doctor. And if the policeman's in the room, you don't have a privilege with a police officer in the room. So sorry, you just don't. Just doesn't work that way. So I think it's for the best that gets delayed. We were going to have Lori Vallow Daybell for Charles Vallow's murder trial in August, but that got postponed to February. And we were going to have Sarah Boone's trial, but Suitcase Sarah has been ruled that she has waived her right to counsel, and so she must proceed pro se, and that will start in October to give her a little more time to prepare. But the judge said nothing is delaying that, barring something extremely unusual, and that includes appointing private counsel. So Sarah will be coming up in October, and we will definitely be watching that. So as I say, have a great weekend, and we will see you soon. Stay safe. Bye-bye.